Presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now, and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, we saw you on television. I say, oh yes, on what? On GB News. Hello, are you the famous Sue?
The whole crew hid me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GB News family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again. You just tuned in. Where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Good morning, or indeed good evening. Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
Well, we're unwavering in our support, and that is why I am here, to send that very clear message to the Ukrainian people on their Independence Day, their 35th Independence Day.
Andy Burnham has landed in Ukraine. The two allies have further entrenched their military and security cooperation as Britain commits to the long haul for the country. Just how significant is the new Prime Minister's first overseas trip? Also tonight,
we are going to hold everyone accountable, and this is economic asphyxiation of this regime.
The Trump administration has launched what it calls an unprecedented economic onslaught against Iran, warning countries and businesses around the world to cut ties with Tehran or face US secondary sanctions. Will this maximum economic pressure break the logjam in the months-long conflict? Also,
and it came super fast. Within 20 minutes, we were told we got the alarm to go ahead and get out of there.
Around 90,000 people have been told to evacuate or prepare to leave their homes as a fast-moving wildfire threatens Reno in Nevada. We'll have the very latest updates on the devastation. Also tonight,
well, I hope in my lifetime I see this country rejoin the European Union.
I am not proposing that the UK considers rejoining the EU. I respect the decision that was made at the referendum.
We've had mixed messages from the Prime Minister, to say the least, on this subject in the past, but now Andy Burnham says Britain must be bolder about moving closer to the European Union. This as he pushes for a step change in relations with Brussels. Is Burnham now at risk of banging on about Brexit? Also tonight,
I would expect that from China. I would not expect that from Canada. We have to remember, Canada is a state, sorry, Freudian slip. That was actually an accident.
Well, was that genuinely an accident? I'm not quite sure. President Trump has escalated his trade war with Canada today, announcing 50% tariffs on Canadian cars, trucks, automotive parts and steel beginning in January, conveniently after the midterm elections. Is there a way back for the North American friendly neighbours? Well, I'm Tom Harwood and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome to The Late Show Live. Yes, it's late. This is a show and indeed, it's live. Joining me this evening in Washington is my panel, the Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins and the political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon. All the way over in London is political commentator Matthew Stadlen and the former Conservative MP and Minister Michelle Donnellan. Good evening to you all. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. Now, Andy Burnham landed earlier in Ukraine, his first overseas visit as Prime Minister. Yes, co-chairing the very latest meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. He urged allies to send more air defence systems to Ukraine and called for tougher sanctions on Russian oil. Well, Britain is also releasing the blueprints, the secret blueprints to Kiev so they can build their own long-range missiles. In return, Britain became the first international partner given access to a vast Ukrainian database built on real-world battlefield data under a new AI defence partnership signed by the two allies. Well, the intelligence contains millions of images of Russian air defences, troops and drones. But predictably, Russia has accused the UK of participating in the war and adding fuel to the fire. So just how significant was this trip as Andy Burnham left British soil for the first time since becoming Prime Minister? Well, with me now is the former chair of the Defence Select Committee in the UK Parliament, Tobias Ellwood. Tobias, thanks indeed for joining us. This is a significant, symbolic first visit for the new Prime Minister. But does it do anything beyond that symbolism?
Well, good evening. Absolutely, it does. Andy Burnham's not strong on foreign policy, on defence and security, and he's come out with a lot of domestic policies, but nothing from the geopolitical side. So his visit going to Ukraine is symbolic in that sense. I hope he will learn that we ourselves need to upgrade our defence posture. The world's getting more dangerous, not less. But what he does do as a Prime Minister, and sadly we've had a few, is continue the strong UK commitment that began 4 years ago under Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, and Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, recognising the wider threat to European security from Russia. If we're honest, we've been too risk-averse in our support for Ukraine. There was providing the military assets that they really need to push Russia back. There's been public debates, if you recall, on anti-tank weapons, tanks, F-16s, and indeed the very long-range weapons, the deep strike cruise missiles that we're actually now talking about. These very same missiles we wanted to gift to the United States. It was actually Joe Biden, that said, no, that might be inflammatory. It might escalate. Well, that's actually not how you deal with the bully. So I'm pleased to see that now we are working very closely, and that commitment to support Ukraine and the people of Ukraine and stand up to Russia remains firm, even though we have now yet another new Prime Minister.
It does seem that the longer this war drags on, the more there is a level of uncertainty, frankly, about how this might end. The number of false dawns there have been, some reports of Ukraine gaining some more territory, but still these lines fairly stagnant, really quite stagnant over the course of the past 2 years or so. Tobias, how important, therefore, is this new information sharing, this deal where both sides are getting something, the data that Ukraine is giving Britain and the blueprints that Britain is giving Ukraine?
Well, I began by saying, and I find myself saying this rather a lot, that we are still not investing enough in our own defence, our own security. And the way we now fight has changed tremendously because of advances in technology. And Ukraine is that laboratory, if you like, that's demonstrating that advances in technology, drones, AI, autonomous warfare, it's happening there. So the fact that Britain is actually working closer with Ukraine, I hope will actually benefit the UK as well, because I'm afraid our defense systems and so on, we're like a 1990s tribute band. We're stuck in the conventional space and not recognizing how grey zone warfare, attacks on our economy are now growing. Indeed, it's worth stressing that much as we're supporting Ukraine here, we know, we've discussed it ourselves in the past, every day we are attacked by Russia. Cyber attacks, threats to our undersea cables, coercion, sabotage. These are the things that Russia is doing every day to Britain. Imagine how that would escalate if Russia was able to claim any sort of victory in Ukraine.
Really, really significant things to think on there, Tobias. Just quickly, before we let you go, the New York Times today has been running a piece about how Russian drones have been targeting Ukrainians autonomously, without a human in the loop, just AI deciding what to target and who to kill. Should we be concerned?
Oh, yes, absolutely. As I say, this is the changing face of warfare, where you get semi-autonomous and autonomous decision-making taking place, where humans are removed from the loop. We are not going down that road, but it shows other nations are. And going back to Britain's defence, you could easily see drones heading to the UK's way, very easy to deny this. A couple of weeks ago, I was able to fly a Cessna over Portsmouth, over our 2 aircraft carriers. I couldn't believe that I was allowed to do that, 1,000 feet above our naval fleet. It's our air defences are simply non-existent in the UK. We are unprepared for the type of warfare that is heading our way. And I fear, because we are now leaning more into supporting Ukraine, we've got British-made drones there as well. Russia has recalled its ambassador there. Putin has vowed revenge. We need to brace ourselves for some form of grey zone attack, I think very, very soon indeed.
Wow. Well, on that stark warning, Tobias Ellwood, thank you very much indeed for joining us live on The Late Show Live. Well, let's turn now to my panel. In Washington, D.C., the Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins and political strategist Thomas Corbett Dillon. Over in London, of course, Matthew Stadlen and Michelle Donnellan. Laurie, let's start with you. Ukraine seems like it is not as high on the US political agenda as it is on the British political agenda. Is there a widening gulf now across the Atlantic?
I'm glad you brought this up. Thank you, Tom, because yes, there is a widening gap. The president has not been focused on Ukraine since he started his second term. And you saw the way that Zelensky was treated in the White House. You can debate whether or not you thought one started, the argument or the other. But watching that play out like that in the White House in the Oval Office was painful to watch. But from that, we have not seen support, to the point where even now the types of drones that Ukraine has been very successful in using that are much cheaper, much more nimble, easier to be deployed, etc., much lighter also in weight, that we're not supplying those to them. And now the United States back in August asked Zelensky, after he already had offered, said, here, we can help you, we can teach you, we can give you some of our technology and the operational success that we've been doing so you can use it in Iran. And the United States and this administration said, no, we don't need your help. Now they've had a different change in tune. But at the same time, unfortunately, when anything involving ego has to do with President Trump, he doesn't really fall on the sides of our allies traditionally and historically speaking. And we're seeing that with Canada. And the fact that 3 civilians, Ukrainian civilians, I don't know if 1 or 2 of them were children, have been killed using NVIDIA. The specific name is NVIDIA Jetson Orin types computer chips within these drones that are acting autonomously. As you said earlier in your lead up, no human in the loop, completely going on its own and attacking. In this case, you saw the video, it's been all over the internet since Saturday, of a child on his bicycle, a drone coming on approach to him. He sees what it is and it fires and it kills him.
It's terrifying.
This cannot happen, but people need to be very aware that this is new warfare. This is what we're dealing with here.
Well, this is the world that we live in, and it's becoming an increasingly scarier world, Thomas. I suppose ultimately there are huge concerns now about how the West defends itself.
Well, that's right. And, you know, I understand the Americans are very confused that Andy Burnham's first trip, while the Americans, by the way, are massively struggling in Iran, they're spread very thin. This is the first time the Americans have not had an aircraft carrier in the Pacific since 9/11. They're struggling, and his first position is to go and, like, poke the Russian bear and say, you know, well, we're embracing Ukraine and we're defending Ukraine. The UK cannot defend Ukraine against Russia, can't defend itself against Russia without American support. This is not helpful for the Americans right now. So I don't know what he's thinking, turning up in a t-shirt, looking ridiculous. This is not the right move.
Do you think that Andy Burnham should have shown support for the war in Iran, because this has become a very hot button issue, both in the United States and the United Kingdom? It's a deeply unpopular war, at least with Britain and for the majority of Americans, dare I say, too.
Right, I mean, but he didn't need to take a position. You know, he could have gone in and focused on domestic issues. The UK is really struggling right now. For his first thing to be going and being Ukraine and doing all this, it makes no sense. The Americans are not happy with this situation because once again now, the US are like, okay, Russia are putting it up. As Tobias Elwood was saying, if drones start coming to the UK, then what? The Americans cannot defend drones against their aircraft carriers in the sea out there. And we're going to, you know, the UK are going to fight back and say, yeah, we can stand up to Russia. No, they can't. And the fact that he's out doing this, I think it was totally misguided.
On that point, Michelle Donnellan, this is clearly a moment of frankly, worry for the world. I'm sure there's a stronger word I could use than worry. But ultimately, what we're seeing here is a new form of warfare, as we've continually said. And Britain is trying to say the right things. But it's America that has provided the majority of the money for Ukraine over the course of the last 4 years.
Yeah, I think it is important for countries to continue to stand by Ukraine, both privately and publicly. And I think it is the right thing for the new Prime Minister to cement that position and to show that the United Kingdom is fully behind Ukraine and understands how important it is, not just for them, but for democracy itself and to protect ourselves. I think there is a bigger issue, though, at play in terms of showing all of our hands and all of our workings, and some of that should be kept surely secret and diplomatic, because today we've heard the full extent of exactly what we've given Ukraine, how we've done it, etc. And Putin is hearing all of that. So I think it would have been better, personally, to speak about how we stand by Ukraine and we will continue to support them, but not to detail the exact homework as to how we're doing that, because I think that does put a massive target on our backs now.
That's interesting. Matthew Stadlen, should we perhaps have just ramped up our production of these particular weapons and sold them or given them or loaned them or whatever to Ukraine, boosting British manufacturing as well? Was it right to give away the blueprints?
We have a proud history in this country, Tom, of standing up to bullies. And I note that your guest in the Washington studio has been talking down Britain's attempts to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine against Russian aggression, a Russian invasion, which, by the way, Donald Trump at one point suggested was the Ukrainians' fault, and an astonishing comment from the White House. Of course it's right that we stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine, and of course that comes with risks. You think about how many mothers and fathers in Ukraine have lost their sons and daughters on the front line. Tens of thousands of people have died on that front line from Ukraine. And then I think, what is it, 12,000 civilians? Is it something like that from Ukraine who've died as a consequence of Putin's invasion? Let's be absolutely clear, that is who started the war. As Andy Burnham, our Prime Minister, said in the last 24 hours, who started the fire in response to Russia's outrageous threats. So we've got to stand firm. But am I concerned about the level of our defence spending and what we're spending our money on? As Tobias Elwood, a real expert in this field, made clear again, of course I am. And I'm a father myself. I've got 2 young children. We're watching those robotic Olympics, or the equivalent of in Beijing, where a robot has just beaten Usain Bolt's human world record. Things are gathering speed at an astonishing pace right now, quite frankly, a frightening pace. And as Tobias made clear, we've got to be prepared for the warfare, not just of the future, of the president. The idea that Russian troops were going to suddenly land in London was obviously a nonsense, but they've got the sorts of weapons that they've been honing on the battlefields of Ukraine, drenched in blood, that are a threat to us, and we've got to wake up.
Well, I'm going to let Thomas come back to you in a later hour. I'm afraid we have run to the end of this segment. But, Matthew, as you mentioned, we will be talking about China's prodigious expansion of robots or of humanoid robots and what's being called the Beijing Robot Olympics a little bit later in this programme, and indeed much more from all of my panel. Thank you, every single one of you. Now, the Trump administration has launched... Oh, indeed. Let's have a look with what's still ahead on The Late Show Live, because the Trump administration has launched what it calls an unprecedented economic onslaught against Iran, warning countries and businesses around the world to cut ties with Tehran or face US sanctions. Will this maximum economic pressure break the logjam in the months-long conflict? Well, this is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, the Trump administration has launched what it calls an unprecedented economic onslaught against Iran, warning countries and businesses around the world to cut ties with Tehran or face US sanctions. Well, the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, says that the aim is to economically isolate the Iranian regime and warned no one is above the measures.
As I said, every country, every entity should know that they should be prepared to face U.S. sanctions. And no one is above this. We are going to hold everyone accountable, and this is economic asphyxiation of this regime. And Jennifer, as I said, no one should test our resolve. So.
Yes, announcing Operation Economic Outcast, Bessent says a wave of sanctions is already being rolled out, with a major financial institution expected to be targeted by the end of this week. Well, he also warned countries and companies that refuse to comply could ultimately be cut off from the dollar-based financial system altogether. So is this threat of maximum economic pressure going to be the policy tool that breaks the months-long logjam? Well, with me now is geopolitical expert Kate Jones. Kate, we learnt a lot from what the Treasury Secretary was saying today, but there was also certain elements of ambiguity. We don't know when these sanctions are going to kick in, and we know some of what they might be, but not all of what they might be.
Yeah, it looks like there's a widespread global sanctions effort here, but also the people who know will know who they are. That was definitely part of the message from this Treasury Secretary. You know who you are. We know who you are. And it sounds like they've done a fairly extensive mapping of the global economy, shadow shipping, and the sort of gold use bags of cash that come off of airplanes at various different points where Iranian airlines still can operate and land. So they seem to know, and they seem to be giving an adequate amount of time. Bessent said, we don't want to break the system, but there's certainly a binary here. Choose to be on Iran's side or participate in the global economy under a dollar-backed system.
This was the extraordinary thing, that you can either sort of be with the United States and enjoy all the advantages of the global economy, or I think in the words of Scott Bessent, tether to Iran and expect to share in the isolation of a withering regime. I mean, this is North Korea on steroids.
Well, look, the Iranian regime, what they're trafficking in is missile parts, ballistic missiles, uranium. The system is allowing for shadow shipping. It's all shadow economy, shadow tankers. So what he seeks to dismantle is already an economy that isn't very desirable to most Western societies. But it's also an economy that is, in part, there were multiple audiences in that speech. Among them were probably running across the Middle East and others. You know, don't be afraid anymore, because we understand that there's a sort of element of coercion in doing financial transactions with Iran and knowing that there will be repercussions if you don't. So, you know, removing that, and there's no cushion for them aside from, you know, it's going to hurt more if you find yourself outside the system. And then, of course, there's China, and China not really being explicitly called out in any of the documents that have come around this, but surely China is really that's the big test case of, does this work? Because China can make a choice of whether or not it wants to participate, but it is very dependent on the dollar-backed system. It transacts with all the same banks and uses dollars, so it may be that China finds ways to cooperate too. So that'll be the big test case, and I think it's better to look at it less from the rhetorical perspective and more from the action. You know, do we see a sanction come down, and do we see someone making a change? Because it's kind of self-enforcing by the model. It's an elective self-enforcement. If you want to participate in this system, don't behave this way.
Well, that is absolutely fascinating, that we know what to watch to see if this will work, and that is how China behaves. Ultimately, Donald Trump, I believe, is meeting with Xi Jinping in the coming weeks, so I suppose that will be a particular moment to look at. Kate Jones, geopolitical expert, thanks indeed for joining us this evening. Really appreciate your time and your expertise on this issue. Well, let's turn now to my panel, both in Washington, D.C., the Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins and the political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon. Over in London, political commentator Matthew Stadlen and former Conservative Minister Michelle Donnellan. We'll start in London this time, just to switch it up. Michelle, this could have hugely reverberating ramifications for the global economy.
It could, but we're already seeing huge ramifications to the global economy because of Trump's war. And I think the priority does need to be trying to stop it now and put pressure on Iran. So I think it's the right course of action, although I would argue it's probably going to be too little too late, is the reality. And as we're seeing, this scenario that he's found himself in is a very difficult one to get out of, and there's been a lot of underestimation of just how difficult it was going to be. At the beginning of this conflict, we saw comments that it would only be a few weeks, and look where we are now. It's still carrying on, and every time there's potentially an end in sight, it manages to move, and it doesn't happen. So I think this is the right thing. Trump has to do everything he possibly can do to manage to put pressure on the Iranian regime to try and push for that conflict resolution. However, I do think that they are so determined that they will be able to weather those storms that come now.
Laurie, high risk, high reward.
High risk and I don't think there's going to be high reward. Let me just be clear. D-Day, the significance of that, I somewhat take offense to even using that term, because D-Day, let's remember, it was suffering, it was sacrifice, and it was a strategic turning point in that war. American families lost sons, they lost fathers, they lost brothers on the beaches of Normandy. So this, to me, signals that it's not Iran that's just going to continue suffering, if you want to say that they are suffering. Economically, the people of Iran are certainly suffering. But this means that American consumers, American voters, they are going to, as Michelle stated, they are going to keep suffering, because this does not change any strategic military maneuvers. There is no strategic policy or new policy position coming out from the White House. This is, we're just going to use, financial soft power, if you will, if they think it's soft power, to try to win this war by bleeding them of money and going after people that may be giving them money or buying them weapons or supplying them weapons. That is not going to stop the war. Let's be very clear. The Iranians have been dragging things out for over 49 years. They know how to do this. They know how to play the long game. And right now, their long game is after November. Their long game is after 2028. They know that the longer this war goes on, the worse that the Republicans are going to do in the midterms, and they're just wait and see.
Thomas, this is a problem that any democracy has when it takes on an autocracy. Democracies sort of have to respond to public pressure, whereas autocracies just don't.
Right, I mean, first of all, we acknowledge how great Scott Bessent is and puts our John Healey trade unionist to shame, who's done nothing other than work in politics. We love Scott, a great guy. But, this situation, unfortunately, I have to agree with Laurie. It is quite a difficult situation for the United States. If anything, I'd say they're at a stalemate, because look at the situation. Trump has consistently, threatened that he's going to unleash hell. What that means is kind of doing damage that they really don't want to do, and particularly they cannot defend. If the Iranians go into the Gulf and hit the desalination plants, if they hit the oil refinery, they do not have the weaponry to defend from this. So they're in a tough situation right now. I don't think anyone was really expecting this to happen. But, I think this is a smart move by the Treasury Secretary. He's a very intelligent man. So we'll see what they come out of this.
Matthew Stadler.
Well, first of all, this constant sniping about our government back at home from Thomas. John Healey's only been Chancellor for a month or so. I'm not sure what he's done wrong so far. And, of course, he resigned, didn't he, as Defence Secretary, which was the final nail in the Starmer political coffin, because he thought that we were underfunding defence. This is a man who clearly, knitting this topic together with the previous topic, clearly believes that we need to spend a lot on defending ourselves. I don't think he's done anything wrong as Chancellor so far. Give the man a chance. But on this question of Iran, let me say this to begin with so that my comments are not in any way misinterpreted. The Iranian regime is an evil regime. And you'll absolutely have your finger on the pulse there, Tom, by saying that if you are an autocracy, indeed if you're a dictatorship like Iran, then you don't have to bow to popular opinion in the way that you do if you're a democracy. And to an extent, that means they have an advantage. Now, America, Trump wants us to believe that they have obliterated Iran on the battlefield. And to an extent, they have. And yet, where are we now? They are having to resort to this D-Day of economic sanctions, so-called, because they're getting nowhere. So for all their extraordinary weaponry, their modern-day equivalent of shock and awe, we're still in a position where, to some extent, Iran, like it or not, and I certainly don't like it, has its foot on the chest, if not the throat, of Donald Trump. And you just look at the price at the petrol pump here in the UK. It went down again for a bit after that spike after the beginning of Trump's war and Israel's war. And then it's gone back up again because Trump is not in control of this thing. It's extremely worrying. I would be prepared to pay more petrol at the pump, don't get me wrong, I drive quite a bit, but I'd be prepared to pay more petrol in the pump if I really thought that Trump was going to stop them getting a nuclear weapon. But do we know that? Are we any safer as a world as a consequence of this thing having dragged on for 6 months so far? I'm not sure.
Michelle, is the difficulty here that obviously the United States military is the most powerful in the world, but they've sort of been fighting with one hand tied behind their back. There is no way to actually win this war with air power alone. Normally, when the US comes in and provides air cover, there's someone on the ground that supports them. Perhaps America thought at the start of this war that those people who took to the streets, who wanted to see change in their country, that they would do something. But it seems like, well, maybe a significant number of them were killed by the regime, and still more are worried about what they would have the capacity to build in the event that they did take to the streets once more.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure that they're terrified as well. I'm sure that there was that calculation. I think there was probably a bit of arrogance as well, and underestimation in general at how difficult this would be. But I actually think we're in a more dangerous position now than when this began, because what Trump has done is he has illuminated to the Iranian regime just what a weapon they have in terms of the strait itself and how they can hold the whole world to ransom with that. And the fact that they have continued this conflict now, and there doesn't seem to be a resolution in sight, and America didn't win it quickly within a few weeks, shows how strong they are, in fact. And therefore, I think that it has led us into a more dangerous predicament now than when we began this conflict.
They're not strong. I don't think they're strong. They're resilient, they're canny, and they're a terror state. They don't play by the rules that we might hope they play by, and they're prepared to tread all over their civilian population. And that makes them a very canny and dangerous opponent.
If they are a terror state, why on earth would America not want to pursue what Scott Bessent laid out today? Surely this is a productive and wise economic strategy then, because we wouldn't want the United States to be tacitly supporting with the dollar system people who turn Iranian oil into gold for them.
I haven't specifically criticised this latest move by America. What I've said is that it represents a degree of desperation from a president who came to power, remember, a couple of years ago, saying he wasn't the guy for the forever wars. Now we're in a 6-month combat that refuses to end. I'm pointing out that this is going badly so far. I'd like it to go well, but it's not going well.
Well, we'll keep a close eye on it. Thank you to my entire panel on that. Much more from all of you, of course, in just a tick. Now, around 90,000 people have been told to evacuate or prepare to leave their homes as a fast-moving wildfire threatens Reno in Nevada. We'll have the very latest updates on this devastation. Well, this is The Late Show Live only on GB News.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Late Show Live. Now, around 90,000 people have been told to evacuate or prepare to leave their homes as a fast-moving wildfire threatens the resort of Reno in Nevada. Yes, the Hawk Fire has been already burning for more than 15,000 acres and remains completely uncontained. Well, not quite. I think there is now some containment in very, very recent hours, with strong winds driving flames towards residential areas. Well, at least 6 people have been injured, including 3 first responders, while homes have been destroyed and thousands left without power. Well, officials say that the fire was caused by human activity, although exactly how it started remains under investigation. We do not know if there was intent. Well, with me now is my panel in Washington, Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins, the political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon, and in London, the political commentator Matthew Stadlen, and former Conservative Education Secretary Michelle Donnellan. Let's start with you, Laurie, because you used to live in the area.
I used to live in the Sierra Nevadas, right outside of where this is. I lived on the California side for 3 years. In the foothills of the Sierras next to Tahoe and Truckee, which is right next to Washoe County in Nevada, which is against Reno, Nevada. So you have all of these ski resorts, you have all of these large and small homes, big communities that live in this area. There are areas that are pretty heavily populated, for being in the forest and in the trees out there. Fires are so absolutely terrifying, and it's part of the reason why I moved away. I'm from Florida, born and raised. Hurricanes are one thing. You have time to prepare, you get warnings, and if you don't get out of harm's way, that's on you, in my opinion, okay? But these are different. When fires start, especially when they go for 1 to 2 days, maybe 24, 48 hours, where they are still at 0% containment and they are just literally spreading as wildfire does, this can have catastrophic consequences. In California, nobody needs another fire, but California certainly does not need another fire. And to hear that this is once again based on human error or human action, this is heartbreaking. But the Cal Fire that's there, they are some of the best in the world, and I am very hopeful and confident, and I'm continuing to pray that they are able to get this under control, because I think it's only at 27% containment right now.
Well, Thomas Corbett-Dillon, this is a problem that we have seen, of course, across America. We've seen it in Europe as well, but I mean, particularly over on the West Coast, it's been a growing issue.
Yeah, and this is also a big issue because Reno, of course, is the landing spot for all the Burning Man people. They're all heading out there in Labor Day, which is coming up here. So this could be causing problems for Burning Man. They've had consistent, it was mud last year, it's fires this year, so it's not doing too well for the old Burning Man crowd. But you know,
Burning Man is like Glastonbury.
Well, yeah, with a lot more craziness, I think.
Okay.
More, it's supposed to be off-grid, there's no power and everything, so it's pretty out there, lots of solar and these sorts of things, but that's a crazy festival. But, as you say, the Americans are pretty good at this. I'm not going to be too worried about this. I think they're pretty good at taking care of this whole situation. But it's not good, as the president has said consistently. They've got to bring back these controlled burns. They have banned them in all these states. The Canadians won't do it. The Californians stopped it. It's not good. They've got to make sure that these fires, if they start, which sometimes they do, they can't spread.
Laurie, just on that point, there has been political division in this country. There are people who say, well, this is all to do with climate change, and then there are people on the right who say this is to do with, well, environmental regulation. Where do you sit?
Specifically as it relates to California, because I lived there and I was in an area, we lived through the Paradise fires and the Camp fires. There is prescribed burns, and I witnessed and went on patrol with many CAL FIRE in my area. Like I said, we would see them all the time. So it is not that they were not happening.
It is true they were reduced.
It was reduced, correct, but they are still doing them. And I have a problem with the fact that during Doge cuts, etc., and the cuts to the national park and the money from national parks and public lands going to different funds that the president, this is all public record, you can look it up, fact check me if you want to, going to the president's pet projects, etc. It has reduced the staff, it has reduced the people on the ground, it has reduced fire jumpers, etc. Critical people that we need that are trained in these areas to be able to be deployed. You see a lot of people from outside, sometimes outside the country, that are so supportive of this, but I don't think that, prescribed burns, opening up federal lands so they can be cut down for timber and corporations can make money on it, that is not the answer. Absolutely not the answer.
Michelle Donnellan, we have seen, of course, some fires in the United Kingdom, not as bad as in America or in continental Europe, but we did see a fire down in Suffolk recently. We've seen fires up in the Midlands as well, or I think the Peak District from memory. This is a problem that, again, there is political debate over the cause of.
Yeah, we saw in the Midlands it devastated houses and left them just non-existent, which must be absolutely heartbreaking for those families. And we have seen this year a very different trend in the fact that we have to get used to this as our new norm and our new reality. And we also saw that we're not adequately prepared. This year we managed to weather it by pulling in fire officers from lots of different areas. If we were fighting fires on multiple fronts at the same time in a near vicinity, we just wouldn't be able to cope with that because we have reduced our fire services dramatically. Some of them are just voluntary officers now. We haven't got that manpower. We don't have the helicopters that can go over. We're just not prepared. And I think that is terrifying.
Loss of life to fire is way, way down than it was in decades past.
Say that again, sorry?
And yet loss of life to fire is way, way down on what it was in decades past, partly because people have fire detectors, partly because people smoke less. I mean, whatever it is, there's an argument that we don't need as many firemen.
Yeah, and that is why we've ended up where we are. But I think we need to think about what we do in the summer, because if we're going to see more of this type of fire, which is aggressive, can change dramatically in terms of direction, we saw it near the nuclear power plant as well, it is very dangerous. So we need to have the resources to be able to deal with that in the summer in particular.
OK, well, Matthew Sadler, I'm sorry, we have run to the end of this segment. We'll come to you first on the next segment, but I'm sorry that we couldn't quite get to you there. Now, lots more still to come on The Late Show Live. Yes, we'll look at the day's newspapers, starting with the front of the Times, which is reporting realistic Burnham hints at tax increases in the budget. Not another one? Well, this is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is the Late Show Live. Now first, let's delve into some of the main stories on the front of tomorrow's newspapers, starting with the front page of The Times, or as they call it in Washington DC, The Times of London, which is reporting realistic Burnham hints at tax increases in budget. Well, with me now is my panel in Washington, Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins and political strategist Thomas Corbett Dillon, and over in London, political commentator Matthew Stadlen and former Conservative MP and Minister Michelle Donnellan. Matthew, promised I'd come to you first. Here it absolutely is. Defend this one. Yet more tax rises.
Just in 20 seconds, let me respond to those awful fires in Reno first, because
yes, of course.
If threats to Reno, it's a wonderful part of the world. I remember throwing my dad with my brothers into Lake Tahoe when we were about, well, we're late teens and early 20s. It's beautiful to think that those people's homes are under threat. We've seen it, Madrid under threat, Bordeaux under threat, as we talked about fires here. If those sorts of images, of course we talk about land management, those sorts of images don't focus our minds on the impacts of man-made climate change. And by the way, we've got El Nino coming as well.
Yes.
Then almost nothing will. We have to say that relentlessly. All right, on the front page of the Times, it's a bit of a word salad from Andy Burnham, the Prime Minister. He was asked, I think on the hoof, wasn't he, in Ukraine by a reporter about tax rises and the budget and all that sort of stuff. And I'm afraid we're not much the wiser so far. But what we do know is he's got to find Healey, the Chancellor's got to find billions and billions for defence and also for Andy Burnham's spending commitments that he's made so far. And we know that we're getting this blowback from the war in Iran that we were talking about earlier. What I don't want is weeks and weeks now of speculation about the sorts of taxes that they may bring in, as we did last year and the year before, because that makes everyone unhappy and it's not good for the economy.
Yeah, Michelle Donnellan, this is yet another round. It will have been 3 budgets in a row where everyone's talking simply about how much more our taxes will rise by.
Yeah, it's extremely depressing and not good news for the economy at all. It's going to be interesting what tax levers he pulls, because he has boxed himself in somewhat. He's already committed himself to the manifesto upon which this government was elected, so that included VAT, income tax and national insurance. And then I believe that he had ruled out some of the taxes we had speculation on before. So it's unclear as to what he's going to do, unless he's going to do a U-turn and go backwards and say that, you know, underneath the bonnet it was much more dire than what he had originally anticipated. However, he also stated within those comments that he would always be mindful of people's jobs and try and do everything he could to support them. The reality is, if he is lurching for tax increases, he is not going to protect people's jobs, full stop. This is going to prove devastating. People are already struggling. Energy prices are going up again. They're going to be the highest in 4 years. The cost of living keeps marching on. People are struggling just with their food bills. And what have we seen from this government? We've seen tokenistic support in things like £4 off going to a theme park. You know, that doesn't shift the dial. And, OK, that was the previous cabinet, not Andy Burnham. However, he also did the tokenistic support for energy bills, which will be a tiny fraction of people's bills. I just think there's a lack of appreciation and understanding of how difficult people have it out there. And this ideological stance, again, that tax rises will lead to more coppers for the Treasury is the wrong equation. Because, of course, we all know that when taxes go up, it will mean that businesses have to cut back, they will make redundancies, or they won't make extra hires, they won't be able to afford to give people pay rises, and in the long run we will have less money floating around our economy and people will be worse off. It is always better to cut taxes and give people more money in their own pockets and more power to decide how they spend their own money.
Leaving the ideology aside, though, Tom, he definitely gets it. I mean, this is a Prime Minister who's just campaigning door to door in Makerfield. And he obviously is listening. He's shown that with his attempts to make small changes that he admits are small to help people with the cost of living crisis. That is absolutely front and centre of his agenda.
But he's banging on about
tax. But he knows he has to promise. He has to promise lots more spending on things like social care, which all people have been talking about. This could be some form of wealth tax, some form of land value tax, some form of council tax revaluation. I'm so sorry. This has been such a short segment and there is so much to say on it. We'll have to dive in when we have no advert breaks in the next 2 hours and we have so much more room to speak. But thank you all. Now, we've had, of course, mixed messages from the Prime Minister on this subject in the past. But, of course, what has Andy Burnham been saying about Brexit?
Well, I hope in my lifetime I see this country rejoin the European Union.
I'm not proposing that the UK considers rejoining the EU. I respect the decision that was made at the referendum.
Well, is the Prime Minister now going to be banging on about Brexit? That next. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A fine start to the day, chance of showers though as the day goes on and potentially some thunderstorms into this evening across more south and western areas. There'll be plenty of dry and sunny weather though elsewhere across the UK through today, particularly parts of northwest Scotland but also central and eastern areas of England seeing a much warmer day today, temperatures climbing towards the higher 20s, 27 or 28 degrees possible in the south and east. More more in the way of showers across the south and west. Some of these could bring some thundery, heavy downpours for a time, but it will feel quite humid wherever you are today. That's away from the east coast, where we'll consistently see quite an onshore easterly breeze, and that's going to bring thicker cloud to eastern areas of Scotland and eastern areas of northern England too. A little bit brighter and clearer though to the north and west. There is a chance of an odd shower across the far northwest of Scotland, but I think otherwise it's going to be quite dry. Some of this rain will start to push up further north into parts of Northern Ireland and West Wales throughout Tuesday. There is some uncertainty in the exact details of this, but I think anywhere in the south and west could see some rain, potentially a thunderstorm through Tuesday evening and the early hours of Wednesday, potentially pushing into parts of southeastern England throughout the early hours of Wednesday. Again, though, I'd stay tuned to the forecast for the details on that. For many areas, though, it's going to be a warm and humid night, quite a lot of cloud around, and that easterly wind continuing across the east coast of the north and east. Another dry day across more northern areas on Wednesday. To the south, though, a much more unsettled day. A continued chance of thundery downpours through the day. That brings a risk of some surface water flooding. Away from the showers, it will feel quite hot and humid, though, temperatures climbing towards 27 or 28 degrees once again on Wednesday. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world, live from Washington, D.C. This is GB News with the stories shaping both Britain and America.
Well, we're unwavering in our support, and that is why I am here, to send that very clear message to the Ukrainian people on their Independence Day, their 35th Independence Day.
Andy Burnham arrived in Ukraine today. The two allies have further entrenched their military and security cooperation as Britain commits to the long haul for the country. Just how significant is this new Prime Minister's first overseas trip? Also tonight.
We are going to hold everyone accountable, and this is economic asphyxiation of this regime.
The Trump administration has launched what it calls an unprecedented economic onslaught against Iran, warning countries and businesses around the world to cut ties with Tehran or face American sanctions. Will this maximum economic pressure break the logjam in the months-long conflict? Also,
well, I hope in my lifetime I see this country rejoin the European Union.
I am not proposing that the UK considers rejoining the EU. I respect the decision that was made at the referendum.
well, he's flip-flopped in the past, but where exactly does Andy Burnham stand on the European Union? He's now saying that we should all be bolder about moving closer back to the political union. Is Burnham at risk of banging on about Brexit? Also tonight,
I would expect that from China. I would not expect that from Canada. We have to remember, Canada is a state. Sorry, Freudian slip. That was actually an accident.
Well, that was the Vice President speaking earlier today, but President Trump has escalated his trade war with China, announcing 50% tariffs on Canadian cars, trucks, automotive parts and steel from January. Is there a way back for the North American, slightly chillier neighbours? Also,
and we will get critical race theory and transgender insanity the hell out of our schools.
The state of New Mexico says it will continue using state funds to pay for gender-affirming care for children, despite the Trump administration ending federal support for that procedure. Is this compassion or is this irresponsible? Well, I'm Tom Harwood and this is The Late Show Live. Yes, welcome to The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening in Washington, D.C. is my panel, the Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins and the political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon. And in London is the political commentator Matthew Stadlen and the former Conservative MP and Minister Michelle Donnellan. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. Now it's back to the future, or is it back to the past? Well, our main news this hour. Andy Burnham says that Britain must be bolder about moving closer to the European Union as he pushes for a step change in relations with Brussels. Well, the Prime Minister says he wants deeper cooperation on defence, security, education and culture ahead of the planned UK-EU summit in October. Well, his comments are likely to reignite the row over whether EU students should be allowed to pay the same subsidised university tuition fees as Britain's students as part of this enormous youth mobility deal that is in the works. Mr Burnham says that, he's previously said he'd like to rejoin the EU in his lifetime, although just around the time of that by-election where he was trying to win favour with the people of Makerfield, he said he respects the referendum result. Well, with me to debate this is the Liberal Democrat commentator Matthew Hulbert. Matthew, thanks indeed for joining me. I'm going to guess that you're saying the Prime Minister's sort of siding up to Europe doesn't go far enough.
Hi, Tom. Good to be with you this morning. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a welcome change of tone from Andy Burnham, who has, as you've already pointed out, rather flip-flopped on this issue before, but he is now the Prime Minister, and this is a welcome change of tone. But of course, for us Liberal Democrats, it doesn't go far enough whatsoever. We'd like him to say, if he was being truly bold, Tom, then he'd be saying that Britain needs to rejoin the customs union and the single market. So he's not being that bold, I don't think.
I'm glad you mentioned the customs union, because all of this technical language can sound a bit baffling for many people, but the customs union is an agreement on tariffs, that the whole bloc works together, that Britain wouldn't have an independent trade policy. That would be controlled by Brussels, as it was while we were members of the European Union. Now, one of the things that was debated most widely in the referendum was, of course, should Britain control its own trade policy? And interestingly, Matthew, this has been an argument on this side of the Atlantic in the last 24 hours as well. I want you to listen to what the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, said in the past few hours.
The U.S. introduced in the last hours, efforts to restrict our ability to have other trade deals. You heard me say a moment ago what we've accomplished in the last year, 20 new deals, economic and security partnership. The prospect of doubling our market access because we believe in free trade. We're the partner of choice in many respects for countries around the world, and the Americans wanted to restrict that. They had language that they wanted to restrict. Unacceptable.
Well, Mark Carney there saying it would be unacceptable for Canada's right to make trade deals being restricted by the United States of America. Why would it be unacceptable for Canada, but acceptable for Britain to have our right to make trade deals restricted by Brussels?
Well, of course, it's always good to hear my fellow Liberal, Mark Carney, wonderful Prime Minister of Canada, but obviously he's talking about Canada and we're talking about Britain, and it's two different countries. And I'll just give you one statistic. According to the Centre for European Reform, Brexit's reduced total UK exports by 12% and total imports from the EU by 16%. That's just one statistic that shows how bad Brexit has been, and I think this government recognises
that's
just how
not
bad
a statistic that shows what Brexit has done. That's a statistic that shows, yes, there has been a change in how much trade there has been in goods, not in services. Services has grown, but in goods there has been a change after the new trading arrangements. Now, some people will say that this is to do with the new trade deal that Brexit delivered. Others might say part of that is to do with that, but you can't ascribe the entire effect. I mean, in the meantime, we've had the energy crisis, the Ukraine war, the COVID recession. I mean, all of these things will have surely played into the volume of trade between Britain and the European Union. You can't put it all down to Brexit.
A lot has happened. It's perfectly true to say that, Tom, and it'd be daft to argue otherwise. But I want to look forward a couple of years to what's likely to be the 2029 general election. And current polls suggest that Andy Burnham's Labour might just be the biggest party, but without a majority. Who is he going to turn to? He's going to turn to the Liberal Democrats. And I hope one of our red lines, as well as proportional representation, of course, will be to be much closer, much closer to the European Union. So poor old Andy Burnham might not have much choice.
OK, Matthew, we've spoken a little bit about the customs union, and that would be surrendering British independent trade policy. That would be throwing in the bin our deal with Australia, New Zealand, India, all these countries that we've signed trade deals with after Brexit. We'd have to revert to EU tariffs in those areas, and indeed quotas, which are perhaps more damaging. Anyway, that's the trade side. You then also said single market, and the single market is, of course, the rules of the European Union. Now, a lot of Brexiteers are very irritated that during our membership, or at least after our membership, we haven't repealed many of the European laws. They're still on the statute book, whether it's the result of the Habitats Directive that means that infrastructure construction is expensive, or whether it's the Working Time Directive that doesn't give employers that much flexibility with employing people. But remarkably, the EU has continued to pass a lot of stuff since we left. So since Britain left the EU passed the EU AI Act, for instance. And even though people said that Brexit would make Britain uncompetitive and not a good place for companies to set up, weirdly, the AI capital of Europe is London. And that could be precisely because London is not in the single market, because we're not subject to the onerous restrictions on the use and development of AI that the EU has legislated for. So in many ways, avoiding lots of these new rules has put Britain at an advantage.
Well, there's always going to be fors and against for anything. I would argue that the fors very much outweigh the against in terms of the need to rejoin the single market. And of course, don't forget that one of the biggest cheerleaders for the single market, if we go back in history, was a certain Margaret Thatcher. And I would probably assume, Tom, that you're a big fan of her. She loved the single market when it first came around. Her views did change as she got older, it's true to say, but she was a big fan of the single
as the
market.
single market changed. Matthew, the single market, when it was envisaged by Margaret Thatcher, was much more of a light-touch regulatory framework through which trade was easy. And then you had Jacques Delors come along as the European Commission president, and he made the whole thing French. And we know how the French regulate their economy into oblivion. We know that despite very, very cheap energy from their quite sensible nuclear power energy policy, despite their very good transport infrastructure and their TGV trains, the super speed trains across the country, despite that, their economy is on the floor because of all of their onerous regulations on business. And it's that French model that the European Union became. And if you look at the growth rates in Europe, especially over the last 15 years, and you compare them to the growth rate of a country like the United States of America that has done the opposite of the European Union on so many things, on the cost of energy, on the light touch regulation that it has, and actually many of these things have bipartisan support in the United States, whether that's fracking or whether that's just a general liking of capitalism. It seems that the European Union has gone in the opposite direction and it's hurt the people of Europe.
Well, I'll always be a proud European. And on about France, I'm headed there for the first time at the weekend. So I'm taking my niece and going along with a friend as well. So it's the first time in Paris. So it'll actually be my very first time on the continent. All these years as a pro-European, and I've never actually been on the continent, but I'm putting that right this weekend.
Sorry, Matthew, this is the most extraordinary moment of the interview. We're going to have to dive deep. You are one of the most foremost pro-Europeans, and you've never been to Europe.
No, I have to say I haven't. It's just never happened for me before, but very much looking forward to being in France on Friday with friends and with my niece, taking her for her 18th birthday. And it's going to be a wonderful moment for me to finally be in Europe.
Well, Matthew, I hope you enjoy it. Paris is a beautiful city. It just hasn't changed particularly much in the last 200 years or so. Maybe one day they'll install air conditioning. We can only hope. But Matthew Holbert, thanks indeed for joining us there. Liberal Democrat commentator, of course. Well, with me now, my panel in Washington, D.C., the Democratic strategist Laurie Watkins, the political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon, over in London, Matthew Stadlen and Michelle Donnellan. Michelle, you, of course, were part of the government that delivered Brexit. Mm-hmm. How do you think it's gone?
Look, I think it could have been better. Obviously, we still need to get those Brexit dividends. But at the end of the day, the British public voted for this. We whatever the colour of the government, should be making it a top priority to make a success of it. And we have carved out our own way forward. We have done our own trade deals. As you point to, we've got some benefits in terms of AI and other things that we haven't had to succumb to heavy European regulation and stifling bureaucracy that can cut industry off at the knees. And now I'm very worried that we have a Prime Minister who has made it very public that he thinks that the UK should rejoin the EU. He's had to backpedal somewhat because his constituency is very pro-Brexit. But it appears that he might be trying to do it via the back door. And let's just examine what it means, this potential deal that he's about to do. If that means that European students are paying only domestic fees for our universities, that will mean that our universities are going to suffer even more because they're already struggling financially. We know that that model is finding it difficult. And also, is that fair? I don't think it's fair. Why should a European student pay exactly the same as a British student, but a student that's coming from outside of the EU is going to pay 4, 5, 6 times more? That just does not seem fair at all. We have left the European Union. That is what the British public voted for. We need to respect that decision. We can't keep doing it bit by bit in terms of getting back in.
Matthew Stadlen, why should we subsidise a student coming from Rome or Romania to come to a British university and pay a fifth of the fees that they otherwise would pay?
Only if it's seen on balance that it's good for growth, Tom. So I voted for Remain, but I advocated very strongly on my radio show at the time against a second referendum. I thought that would have been a slap in the face of democracy, even though some argued that you can't slap democracy in the face with further democracy. I thought that is how it would be interpreted by many millions of people in this country. It would have really damaged the body politic. And I don't think we should rejoin anytime soon either. The toxicity of the debate, plus the fact that if we were to rejoin, it probably wouldn't be on as favourable terms as we had it last time round, or may well not be. But on this particular issue, for me it's about growth. For me it's about growth, Tom.
Yeah. Got that. Ultimately, the risk here is that people in Number 10 will definitely say what you just said, right? People in Downing Street will say, we don't want to go back in. But then bit by bit, salami slicing, they'll sign up to rules on emissions trading and the carbon border adjustment mechanism. And they'll sign up to what's known as SPS, you know, sanitary and phytosanitary rules.
How many
on
people
food
watching
imports.
this show, Tom, how many people watching this show, or indeed around the country, and I include myself in that, I know admirably you are a political nerd and I've got to do better, but how many people really understand the detail of what you've just said? Of course it's important, the devil is often in the detail, but I think the main reason people wanted to leave, well, there's several main reasons. Immigration, although that didn't exactly work out well for Brexiteers. The sense of having control, that didn't work out very well. I don't think the finer details of trade deals, and our trade deals so far haven't exactly been spectacular, I would suggest to you. I don't think that's what really motivates people. So that's why I say it's down to growth. If the government of the day says...
I just elucidated for you the detail of what you just said people voted for. You said people voted for control over their laws, over their borders, over their money and over their trade. 4 things that the EU controlled, that the supremacy of law sat in Brussels, and Brexit returned the supremacy of law to Westminster. And I just said, yes, of course, it sounds ridiculous and nerdy, phytosanitary nonsense. Well, that just means that if the EU decides to allow a certain food or ban a certain food, that's not us making the decision. That's the Europeans making the decision.
Yeah, but
and we have no say over it.
By having a trade deal with India, or with the United States or whoever, we cede to an extent a degree of control. We have it's compromises. We give them stuff, they give us stuff.
We negotiate that deal.
We negotiate that. We don't negotiate it with multiple countries and have to make
but we would be negotiating outside of the EU, with the EU, on terms that we hope overall would be beneficial for the British people. This is not about going, I don't want it to be anyway, and I don't think it will be, about going back into the European Union. It is working out from the outside what is in our economic best interests. And I really don't think the British people will care if we align more closely in certain ways with the EU, if it makes us better off.
But wasn't the vote also about fairness and the British public having a say over their own rules and regulations and laws and having that sense of fairness? Now, if this deal, as been noted in the papers, is to be believed, what is on the table is an exchange between young people in this country being able to go and work and study in the European Union and vice versa.
But Michelle, we already have that with India.
Yeah,
that's one of the things we've done as part of our deal with India.
We would be bringing more to the table by saying that these European students could then study at domestic fees. So we would be turning up more than they would be giving us.
Only if the government thinks that it is in our benefit, there will be a net benefit to the UK. Otherwise, I agree, it would be completely bonkers.
Well, no, they're doing it because they believe that we should still be in the European Union.
So we get a bit of time. No. So we get a bit of time for our DC panel in here. Thomas, Corbett, Dylan, this must sound... I know you've lived in the United States for quite some time now. This argument must sound a little bit strange. I mean, in America, your trade policy is decided in Washington, not in, I don't know, Havana.
Right, and this whole thing is ridiculous, because if he was telling the truth, if he wasn't just appealing to his base and trying to make up for his past statements, he would say that actually the UK should be getting closer to the United States. If he wasn't such a Trump hater, that is the country that you should be aligning to, because look at the growth from 2.5% in the US to like 0.7 in the EU. Every AI company in the world, every social media company, everyone is here. This is the country that we should be aligning with. Why would you join a failing bloc that has absolutely no innovation? How does that make any sense? And first of all, on the day that we've just seen graduate jobs are down 50%, their answer is to let's bring in more European students for cheaper. How about we look after British students? You know, maybe we'd start doing something for them. It makes no sense why they are just hashing this argument. And what it really means is that they're just appealing to their base and saying, oh, we love the EU too. that they should be embracing the United States. If they didn't hate Trump so much, maybe they would.
Let's get closer to the United States, Tom, who's been threatening us with tariffs.
Time in DC now, time in DC. Laurie Watkins, ultimately, it is true to say that the United States has grown a lot faster than the European Union.
Yes. I would like to save my time to talk about Canada and US if we can.
Sure,
so can I talk about that here? Do I?
Feel free.
Okay. Great. Okay. Wait, he said it's the next story?
Yeah, we've just been told it is the next story, but
okay.
say a little bit on it now and save a little bit for us after in the next point too.
Well, I need more than 10 seconds because I want to provide the details for what was in the United States demands of Canada, because the details are very important for viewers to understand.
Okay, understood. Laurie Watkins, we will therefore save you and kick you off on the next segment. Well, thank you all for talking about Brexit for perhaps the longest period of time that any of us have done it since about 2019.
I got out of that.
Well, moving on. President Trump has, of course, escalated his trade war with Canada, announcing 50% tariffs on Canadian cars, trucks, automotive parts and steel from January. The president accused Canada of ripping off the United States for years after trade talks between Washington and Ottawa collapsed last week. Well, the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has vowed to retaliate dollar for dollar, accusing the United States of making unacceptable demands that threatened Canadian sovereignty.
It's not a surprise for us that the U.S. would take some form of reprisal to our response to their unjustified tariff, which was on top of other unjustified tariffs. That's not a surprise. But what message does that send to the workers in Michigan and Ohio and Kentucky and Alabama who rely on Canadian demand? There is a mutually beneficial deal possible here, but it has to be one that respects Canada's sovereignty, that respects our independence, that uses our complementary strengths to build something better, not tear apart for short-term gain. That's the offer.
It's interesting to hear Mark Carney care a lot more about sovereignty now than he did when he was governor of the Bank of England, but that's by the by. The escalation threatens the deeply integrated North American car industry, with American manufacturers heavily reliant on Canadian-made vehicles and parts, raising fears of higher costs for businesses and consumers both sides of that long, long border. Well, with me now is the Policy Director at the Consumer Choice Centre, David Clement. David, thanks indeed for joining us this very evening. This is a huge escalation in this potential trade war.
Yeah, I mean, it's the headline number is huge, 50%. It covers about 5% of Canada-US trade. So we're looking at anywhere between 70 to 90,000 Canadian jobs unevenly spread across the country that would be potentially impacted in the long run. So it's not 50% across the board. It is limited, but still it's hard to not see major problems with the potential of 70 to 90,000 Canadians maybe losing their job, depending on how long this goes on.
How do you work out that number? 70 to 90,000 Canadians losing their jobs. What's the economics of this?
The economics of that is just how integrated in Ontario, for example, where I am, the auto market is. So some of the most popular trucks purchased in the United States, Silverados, the F-Series, those are made in Oshawa and Windsor. They're made in Ontario. And they're made with American parts. They're made with Mexican parts. So there are tens of thousands of employees directly or indirectly involved in that cross-border trade. And just to put it into perspective in terms of how intertwined the North American market is, there is no such thing as an American or Canadian car anymore. There's just a North American car because any given part can actually cross the border upwards of 8 times before it's actually finished in a final car. And so the idea of tariffing that every time it crosses the border is one, it's obviously terrible for Canada, but think about the nightmare that this is going to be for American workers in the plants who finish the cars. So the president is now is tariffing or taxing the means to which cars are built in America and bought by Americans. And so, I mean, you can also apply that same intertwined or metrics for paper and pulp, which is predominantly in British Columbia on the West Coast. And that's where these numbers start to accumulate. And that's where you get the $70,000 to $90,000 range.
Okay, that makes sense, because the American and Canadian economy, and for that part, the Mexican economy, have been integrated since the 90s and continued to integrate. But what do you say, and the economics of that makes perfect sense, but what do you say to the Trump voter in the Rust Belt who listens to what you just said and hears there is no such thing as American cars anymore and thinks that's a bad thing, not a good thing?
Well, I would look at the sticker price. I mean, the 25% tariffs that were already in play were estimated to increase the cost of a car by $3,000. And I mean, back of a napkin estimation on doubling that would take it to $6,000. Is that even remotely affordable? I mean, look at the cost of living crisis that the president himself largely won on, saying we're going to make America great again by making it affordable again, and then rolls out policies to further inflate the cost of goods. And in many instances, these are not things that the United States can go and make themselves. They get aluminum predominantly from the province of Quebec. That's because that's where aluminum is. They really don't have that many other options. They don't have any domestic options. They have to get it from somewhere. So why would they want to tariff and make it more expensive to get it from Canada? I mean, one of the hilarious ironies in all of this was, okay, well, we're going to get it from the United Arab Emirates. And I have no ill will towards the Emiratis. But what was one of the first things that was hit by a drone during the war with Iran? It was the major aluminum manufacturing facility in the UAE. And so the whole idea of trying to irritate your largest trading partner for a deal that you signed in your first term it leaves me scratching my head. There are legitimate American grievances in terms of Canada's approach to trade policy, and I think those are worth being hashed out, and some of those were in this potential deal. But I don't think whatever the grievances are solved by making life more unaffordable for Americans.
Okay, well, David Clement, thanks indeed for talking through this extraordinary time in American-Canadian relations, Policy Director at the Consumer Choice Centre there. Well, with me is my panel here in Washington, Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins, political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon, and in London, Matthew Stadlen and Michelle Donnellan. Laurie, we've been saving you up for this very topic. What do you have to say? Well, I just wanted more than a few seconds, so thank you. All right. The Canadian and United States bilateral trade amounts in 2024 were $1 trillion, which is incredible, right? After the tariffs went into play, 2025, they went down to $720 billion. Okay, still good. There were 13 demands that were made by the United States to the Canadians on top of those 50% tariffs that you mentioned earlier. I want to just lay out very quickly what a few of those are, so people can understand and put yourself in the position of the Canadians, who are our neighbors, our biggest trading partners to the north. And imagine if some of these demands came to the UK, for example. First, elimination of Buy Canada public procurement, meaning that they completely get a ban preference for local or Canadian businesses to be able to put in for bids for contracts, okay? Two, they want to eliminate the cultural language and protection. Most Canadians speak Quebec French, okay? They wanted to also get rid of rules specifically targeting Quebec's French language protections. Another one, dismantling agricultural safeguards. This is very important, especially here in the United States right now. Removal completely. They want Canada to remove their supply management system for dairy, for eggs, and poultry, and adoption of United States chemicals and pesticides. You all maybe have heard we've had 122 food and beverage recalls just within the last year, okay? And they continue to rise. The other one,
Canada must submit to foreign investments in infrastructure, giving the United States functional veto power over foreign investment in Canada. And the last one I will say is preemptive trade restrictions on non-U.S. nations. Canada giving up the right to set independent foreign trade policy for itself and its people, okay? This is so incredibly damaging and not how you treat your ally and partner, especially at a time when our allies are walking away or they're not supporting us in certain ways because of how this president has treated them publicly and privately. And one of your expert brought this up. The timing of this is just insane to me, that we are 71 days from a midterm election, and the Republicans are very worried about crucial states right now where Democrats have good candidates, or they wouldn't be worried and the polls wouldn't be saying so, like, for example, Maine, where my family is from, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New York, Minnesota, Indiana, Ohio. All of these are very critical to the workers that work in auto industries, for example, that have tourism and trade directly along the Canadian border. This is going to hurt American workers and American families, not just on the cost of the tariffs, but everything that comes along with it.
On that point, we'll bring in Thomas Corbett-Dillon.
Well, the whole thing is totally ridiculous. Look, Canada should be grateful, but, first of all, they haven't had to spend a penny on their defense because the Americans look after them for that. And this idea that they've got anything to say that, the cars are built half in Canada. Yeah, they should be grateful that they are, because guess what? America has the greatest manufacturing in the world. They should bring all of that back into the US. They are picking a fight. For some reason, once again, Mark Carney is a Trump hater, and this is what he's doing. He's trying to appeal to his base and win votes. This whole thing, they're going to have to back down because they cannot win against the Americans. They should bring, as you mentioned, the Rust Belt, bring all the manufacturing back. Why are American cars? Because the Canadians aren't buying these trucks. They're being bought by Americans, so let's bring them to American workers. So Carney, I don't know what he's doing with this. As I said, he's trying to win votes. I don't think you want to mess with Trump on this. He's gonna take this to the extreme.
Matthew Stadlen, you have your head in your hands at the point.
It's that sort of populist, lightweight political commentary nonsense that gets us all into such trouble. Laurie and the previous commentator, who I thought was superb, they just dismantled what Trump is up to here. And then we've had this chap Thomas who's saying, oh, it's all rubbish and we should just bring everything back into America and Trump's great and fantastic and right. Thomas also said in the previous segment that we should be allying ourselves economically more closely to America. What he's just demonstrated, and what Laurie, in her opposition to what Trump is doing, has just clearly demonstrated, is that if we were trying to do that, we would be at the behest of the bully in the form of Donald Trump. And guess what? When you are Canada on your own, and Mark Carney is standing up to Trump, he's doing his best. When you're Canada on your own, or you're Britain, great as we are on your own, you are a lot less strong than you are when you are part of a union. And to use that terrible phrase of the populists, I'm afraid that is just common sense.
Well, that makes no sense, because Trump has got 2 years left as president. So you're talking, oh, well, we might get beaten up. You're saying, let's join the EU, which is a failing institution, instead of the biggest economy in the world, which again makes no sense. You are also a Trump hater, and you can't see that actually Trump is not going to be here forever. The Republicans are going to take over. J.D. Vance is going to take over. But back to this idea that Canada has any fight in this. Remember, 90% of Canadians live within 100 miles of the American border. They are the 51st state. Look at Alberta. They are about to have an independence referendum because they want to join the Americans because they hate their liberal government over there. They're just doing crazy things. So this idea that Canada has any argument in this, it's just politics. He's trying to win his voters.
You're a fabulous mouthpiece for one of the worst, if not the worst, presidency of the United States that there has ever been. And you've reminded us, and I was going to bring it up myself, that Trump started all this nonsense with the audacity of saying to the Canadians that we want to annex you. Canada is almost a continent, it's so big. And to have your, yes, more powerful, stronger economically neighbour telling you that we want to annex you is just profoundly offensive. And it's the sort of politics that I still struggling to grasp is emerging from the Oval Office, which is the front piece of one of the greatest countries on earth. And Donald Trump and you with your nonsense are just profoundly letting it down.
Matthew Stedden, you really think Donald Trump is worse than James Buchanan, the man who brought about the Civil War? Well, before we get into a historical debate, let's bring back in Laurie Watkins. I know you've been itching to say something.
I just want to say one thing, because you know, viewers, that I always come prepared. You might not agree with me all the time, but I'm going to give numbers. It's very interesting, and I'm curious where Thomas is getting these numbers from, that he says Carney just wants to get more votes. Carney is sitting at 66% of an approval rating right now.
Because he's a Trump hater.
Hold on.
That's exactly what they love about him. He won because he was attacking Trump.
Higher than any other world leader right now. And you know where President Trump is sitting? At the high 30% points. So 60-30, this is Donald Trump being a bully, trying to use his ego to hurt American consumers and our trade and partnerships with our allies.
He's defending American interests by bringing back manufacturing. Why is cars being made in Canada? The Canadians should be grateful.
OK, at this point, let's turn to Michelle Donnellan, because I do want your view on some of these things that allegedly, and we haven't heard this from the American side, we've heard this from the Canadian side, the things that they sort of demanded of Canada, you know, that they should end the Buy Canada policy. They should have to include America in that. The agricultural regulation should be based on America rather than Canada, and that trade restrictions, well, that Washington should have almost a veto over trade. I mean, all of these three things are rules of the European Union as well. I thought it was interesting when Laurie was setting out how much they must be rejected by any sovereign country. I mean, that's basically the Brexit debate again.
It is. I mean, I think Thomas has certainly drunk the Kool-Aid and over-consumed to the point that he's quite delusional now.
Land of the free.
Yes. The reality is that this is Trump once again trying to grandstand and prove his weight ahead of the midterms. Yet the reality is it's actually going to cost the American public. And it looks quite ridiculous on the world stage, completely so.
Why would we try to rely as heavily as Thomas would like us to do on America when Trump has already threatened us with tariffs?
Yeah.
It just makes absolutely no sense. He's unpredictable. He's unpredictable, egotistical, and he is an unreliable trading partner. That much is blindingly obvious.
And let's not forget, most of the time when he goes down the tariff route, he has to backtrack, doesn't it? It often doesn't work out the way that he thinks it's going to work out.
Michelle Donnellan, do you accept that to a lot of Americans, to many tens of millions of Americans, there is this great anxiety over the fact that the world has globalised in the last generation, that the sort of manufacturing that used to exist in many states is now spread around the world, and there are many more complicated supply chains. And as we were saying in the interview preceding, I mean, there are many economic arguments that is a thing that creates cheaper cars. But there is a sense of dislocation in the sort of what have become known as the Rust Belt states or the flyover states, these states that Trump just keeps on winning. He speaks to an anxiety of the American people on this issue.
Yeah, and it's not just in America where we see that anxiety because of technological changes and the way that our economies are changing, and because of globalization. That means that people's livelihoods are changing, and the industries that they have worked in previously are evolving. But burying our head in the sand and trying to hark back to an era that doesn't exist anymore is not the answer. You know, obviously America is extremely strong on technology and the AI agenda. That is the area that they should be leaning into more so and doubling down on, rather than focusing on protectionism, which is going to hurt them in the long term and hurt the American public.
Well, thank you to all of my panel on that, at times, feisty debate. Much more of that to come, of course, still ahead on The Late Show Live.
And we will get critical race theory and transgender insanity the hell out of our schools.
New Mexico, the state, says it will continue using state funds to pay for gender-affirming care for children, despite the Trump administration ending federal support for the treatment. Well, is this compassion or deeply irresponsible? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A fine start to the day, chance of showers though as the day goes on, and potentially some thunderstorms into this evening across more south and western areas. There'll be plenty of dry and sunny weather though elsewhere across the UK through today, particularly parts of northwest Scotland, but also central and eastern areas of England seeing a much warmer day today. Temperatures climbing towards the higher 20s, 27 or 28 degrees possible in the south and east. More in the way of showers across the south and west. Some of these could bring some thundery, heavy downpours for a time, but it will feel quite humid wherever you are today. That's away from the east coast, where we'll consistently see quite an onshore easterly breeze, and that's going to bring thicker cloud to eastern areas of Scotland and eastern areas of northern England too. A little bit brighter and clearer though to the north and west. There is a chance of an odd shower across the far northwest of Scotland, but I think otherwise it's going to be quite dry. Some of this rain will start to push up further north into parts of Northern Ireland and West Wales throughout Tuesday. There is some uncertainty in the exact details of this, but I think anywhere in the south and west could see some rain, potentially a thunderstorm through Tuesday evening and the early hours of Wednesday, potentially pushing into parts of southeastern England throughout the early hours of Wednesday. Again, though, I'd stay tuned to the forecast for the details on that. For many areas, though, it's going to be a warm and humid night, quite a lot of cloud around, and that easterly wind continuing across the east coast of the north and east. Another dry day across more northern areas on Wednesday. To the south, though, a much more unsettled day. A continued chance of thundery downpours through the day. That brings a risk of some surface water flooding. Away from the showers, it will feel quite hot and humid, though. Temperatures climbing towards 27 or 28 degrees once again on Wednesday. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to the Late Show Live. Now, New Mexico says it will continue using state funds to pay for gender-affirming care for children, despite the Trump administration ending federal support for that procedure. Well, a new rule taking effect in October will stop Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program funding services including puberty blockers, hormones and speech therapy. Well, New Mexico has become one of the strongest US states for protections around transgender healthcare, with some families moving there from neighbouring states where access is being restricted. Well, around 61% of children in New Mexico are insured through Medicaid, or CHIP as it's known, that Children's Health Insurance Program. Well, let's get more on this now with my panel. In Washington, D.C., the Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins, the political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon. In London, Matthew Stadlin, Michelle Donnellan. Let's start with you, Thomas, on this one. This is, I suppose, federalism in action.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit of confusion because people are assuming that the president has banned gender-affirming care. That's not what he's done. What he's said is that they should not be using federal funds. Medicaid is basically free healthcare, right? They should not be using that for any of this gender-affirming care. But remember, this is kind of an agreed policy. It's 54% of Democrats agree that children should not be given gender-affirming care. So, you know, I don't think this is actually that big of an issue here. I think New Mexico is, you know, actually, as you said, appealing to a sort of market. The hospitals there have got people coming in, they're making money on this. But this is an interesting one because Republicans now, the gay organization Republicans called Log Cabin Republicans, just announced they are dropping the T. They are now an LGB organization. So the shift is really changing in this country. And you know, that organization, the president, first of all, by the way, he has been the most pro-gay president we've ever had. He is the first president to win on a platform of openly supporting gay marriage. Even Obama didn't support gay marriage when he first ran for president. So this idea that he is, you know, he hates the gays is ridiculous. He's actually, you know, he loves the gay national anthem. He's a big fan. So, you know, the Republicans credit the LGBT Republicans, the Log Cabin Republicans, with reaching out to suburban women voters in rural states, in red states, and winning their votes through that. You know, if you think about these women, a lot of the gays that they know tend to be like hairdressers and things like that. They do not like this T issue, the trans issue. So, you know, people are quite happy that they've dropped that. They are now the LGB organization. Okay. So it's a complicated issue here.
Laurie Watkins, it is fair to say that this has been an issue that has been been more harmful, perhaps, to the Democrats than the Republicans. There was that big TV ad run over here in the United States during the presidential election where a voiceover goes, Kamala is for they, them, Trump is for us. And a lot of the analysis after the election pointed to that ad as being particularly persuasive.
This is a wedge issue that the GOP and Donald Trump and his administration loves to use, and they love to use it, and unfortunately, media outlets can continue to perpetuate it by bringing up these headlines. Even Thomas said, I don't really think it's a big deal, because it's not a big deal. It's a headline that people want to incite division and, I don't know, maybe harm to the LGBTQ community. I don't care. If somebody wants to do what they want to do, let them do that. As far as children, yes, you even cited people, the Democratic Party, they've taken a much higher threshold and vote against that for children when it comes to children. But this is not an issue. The percentage of people in the United States that either even get gender-affirming care or that are transgender is less than 0.1% of the U.S. population. So this is not a huge issue.
Why is it left-wing organizations keep bringing it up? It's the left that keep bringing this up. It's the Human Rights Campaign. It's even you've got James Talco running for Senate in Texas. They said, what keeps you up at night? And he said, trans children. It's the Democrats that are pushing this. It's not the Republicans.
Laurie?
No comment.
Okay.
Could you agree? I would like us to focus on much more important.
Let's turn to London then, because this is also a big issue in the United Kingdom. And ultimately, Michelle, I think a lot of Brits will be, frankly, very, very bewildered by the fact that, because of the stereotypes about American healthcare in Britain, where people think, Americans are left to bleed out on the streets if they don't have healthcare.
Not true.
Ultimately, people will be absolutely bamboozled by the idea that the federal government was paying for puberty blockers for children and the like.
Yeah, I think they will, because it's tantamount to child abuse, and I think many people in the United Kingdom think that. Because obviously children are not old enough to make those types of decisions that are permanent for the rest of their life, that they will have to live with, that have very strong ramifications, including in terms of whether they will be able to have their own child, etc., when they're older. So I think people will be quite bamboozled that there was ever a scenario where the federal government was paying for this.
And yet, Michelle Donnellan, of course, we had the Cass review in the United Kingdom, which didn't fall down on one side or the other about the utility of puberty blockers. And Hilary Cass said that actually there should just be more research into this, because we don't yet know the long-term results of puberty blockers for children.
Yeah, but I think that the general public is more in tune with protecting children's childhoods, and that those types of decisions are too premature when somebody is developing, they're finding themselves, they go through different phases in their youth and their early adolescence, and to start a process which is more difficult to get off and that will affect their mental well-being as well is, I think, very premature. And I think a lot of the British public and the people that I speak to feel very strongly that we need to be quite clear-cut on this, and we need to be protecting children's childhood.
I would push back on this idea of it being child abuse. My instinct, absolutely as a non-expert in this, is that children should not be able to do anything that is irreversible. But you're right to bring up Cass and the Cass review, because my understanding is that the recommendation was for trials of puberty blockers. Now, I have my concerns about that as well, but I think front and centre has to be the welfare of the child, and to use phrases like child abuse when we're talking about health professionals and indeed parents who are trying to bring about the best outcomes for their children, I think is really unhelpful. And it's not true to say that the British public, and I know you rode back slightly on that, Michelle, think in one direction. It's more nuanced than that. What I would like is the toxicity and to be taken out of this, and for the care of the child to be front and centre.
But I think, well, I stand by Michael Mann. I do think it is child abuse, because what we're talking about is a child going on a journey that they are not equipped to deal with, both mentally, but completely mentally, and also we're talking about physical ramifications. It is not right to even entertain this when they are that young. They don't know who they are. And I think it's quite ridiculous that as society we've got ourselves into this predicament where we're even beginning to talk about it.
Child abuse, though, implies that the
But it is...
adults, let me just quickly rebut that, if I may. Look, child abuse implies that the adults who are charged with the care of these children are doing this in some sort of sadistic move, when clearly, I mean, obviously there are bad people in all areas of our lives and society, but clearly the adults in the health service and parents involved and so forth, they want the best for the children. Children are in these cases presumably telling them in desperation that they think that they are born into the wrong body. Now, I've told you that my instinct as a non-expert is that children should not be able to do irreversible things to themselves, and I have great concern about that. But I think using language like child abuse just doesn't help the conversation.
Well, I think it does help the conversation, because I think we've pussyfooted around this conversation for too long, and that's why we've ended up with a situation where we have kids presenting in schools that believe that they're horses and then teachers entertaining it. It is absolutely outrageous.
That's so offensive to reduce what has been a human phenomenon for millennia, i.e. the idea of being trans, and to reduce that to ridiculous cases where children are calling themselves horses, and you might find one teacher who's stupid enough to indulge that. That's such an unhelpful way as a former cabinet minister to talk about what is a real thing for real children and parents in this country.
It is, but these are children and we should be looking after their well-being. And just because somebody does something for the right reasons, if it's the wrong thing, doesn't mean that it isn't the wrong thing. And we should be saying to these people, give them as much support to those children as we possibly can, give them as much mental health and well-being support as possible. This is a decision that they need to then reflect upon when they turn 18, and they are in a position to make that decision.
Laurie Watkins, there was a quote from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, over here on this side of the Atlantic not so long ago, where she was put to her with some quotes from 2020, and she said woke one was crazy. And of course, people are thinking that she might be positioning for the Democratic nomination for the presidency next time around, but there is a sense that on both sides of the Atlantic, debates like this one have shifted markedly in the last 4 years.
Yes, many positions that AOC, when she first came on the scene, I did not agree with hardly anything that she stood for. I was surprised when she took out Congressman Bowman and was able to take that district. And, excuse me, she didn't take out Bowman, she took out somebody else. She was elected with Bowman. Excuse me. Some of the positions that she took were, in my opinion, they were way too far to the left. They didn't represent, I think, the majority of Americans, and I'm not even going to say the Democratic Party. She has evolved, as people do evolve. This isn't me giving her a pass. It's just saying I'm actually grateful that she's curious and she's educating herself and she talks to people and she has constituents that are also shaping her opinion. And not just her constituents. You all know she travels America consistently and speaks to people. That's part of the reason why she's at the top of the poll for the Democratic Party right now as a nominee. So good. I hope that she continues to get smarter, to get more evolved on some of these issues, because I think it is more representative to the overall majority of Americans versus some of these fringe issues and making that like your cross you're going to die on. It's not helpful. And one more thing.
Yeah.
I am not a parent of a child, and I don't think any of us on this show are. And I am never going to speak for a person that's been put in that situation, meaning a parent has been presented that from their child, and the mental anguish and the physical and the emotional that they're going through. That's a lot to consider. So I like to give people grace, and I'm not there. I'm not even in their shoes, but I can only imagine how difficult it is.
OK, well, I don't think we yet have time to bring anyone else back in on this conversation, so I'm sorry, we're going to have to pull this to a close here, but much more to come, of course, in the next hour here on The Late Show Live, including this. The so-called Robot Olympics in Beijing. Should the West be worried? A robot has outperformed humans by running faster than Usain Bolt. Well, that's just one of the achievements at the World Humanoid Robot Games. And we've seen some astonishing feats of engineering and Can we even call it athletic ability? Should we be worried once more about this rise of China? And can the West catch up? That next.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A fine start to the day, chance of showers though as the day goes on and potentially some thunderstorms into this evening across more south and western areas. There'll be plenty of dry and sunny weather though elsewhere across the UK through today, particularly parts of northwest Scotland but also central and eastern areas of England seeing a much warmer day today, temperatures climbing towards the higher 20s, 27 or 28 degrees possible in the south and east. More in the way of showers across the south and west. Some of these could bring some thundery, heavy downpours for a time, but it will feel quite humid wherever you are today. That's away from the east coast where we'll consistently see quite an onshore easterly breeze, and that's going to bring thicker cloud to eastern areas of Scotland and eastern areas of northern England too. A little bit brighter and clearer though to the north and west. There is a chance of an odd shower across the far northwest of Scotland, but I think otherwise it's going to be quite dry. Some of this rain will start to push up further north into parts of Northern Ireland and West Wales throughout Tuesday. There is some uncertainty in the exact details of this, but I think anywhere in the south and west could see some rain, potentially a thunderstorm through Tuesday evening and the early hours of Wednesday, potentially pushing into parts of southeastern England throughout the early hours of Wednesday. Again, though, I'd stay tuned to the forecast for the details on that. For many areas, though, it's going to be a warm and humid night, quite a lot of cloud around, and that easterly wind continuing across the east coast of the north and east. Another dry day across more northern areas on Wednesday. To the south, though, a much more unsettled day. A continued chance of thundery downpours through the day. That brings a risk of some surface water flooding. Away from the showers, it will feel quite hot and humid, though. Temperatures climbing towards 27 or 28 degrees once again on Wednesday. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again
to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Very good evening, very good morning. Wherever you are in the world, live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
Well, we're unwavering in our support, and that is why I am here, to send that very clear message to the Ukrainian people on their Independence Day, their 35th Independence Day.
Yes, in his first international trip as Prime Minister, Andy Burnham has been to Ukraine. The two allies have further entrenched their military and security cooperation as Britain commits to the long haul for the country. Just how significant is this first overseas trip for Andy Burnham? Also tonight,
we are going to hold everyone accountable, and this is economic asphyxiation of this regime.
an economic D-Day. That's how the Trump administration has described what it calls an unprecedented economic onslaught against Iran, warning countries and businesses around the world to cut ties with Tehran or face US sanctions. Will this maximum economic pressure break the logjam in the months-long conflict? Also, just astonishing pictures. If you're driving, pull into a lay-by. If you're listening on the radio, whip out your phone. Look at these pictures. No, it's not the new Star Wars film. Robots are outperforming humans. Humanoid robots in China. Achievements at the World Humanoid Robot Games. Should we be concerned about the rise of these Chinese bots? Also,
she said that she couldn't remember anything. The medication was pretty much just destroying her mind, and it wasn't her. She said, this isn't me. I just want to feel better.
it's the case that has gripped America and sent social media into overdrive. Well, now hundreds of women dressed in pink have been declaring peace for Lindsay. Just why has the Lindsay Clancy case of child murder captured the public imagination? Also,
I don't know how they live with themselves. They have children. They don't allow their children to be on social media.
it's a debate that is gripping both America and Britain. Is social media safe for our children? This comes as the head of the National Crime Agency has warned that children are not safe online, saying that 2 generations of teenagers have already been failed. Presumably that includes me. Well, we'll be having that debate shortly. I'm Tom Harwood and this is The Late Show Live. Yes, welcome to The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening in Washington, my panel, Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins, political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon, and over in London, our political commentator Matthew Stadlen and former Conservative MP and Minister Michelle Donnellan. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Now, I haven't got to any of your comments so far on gbnews.com/yoursay, so let's dive into some of those now. Stephen writes in to say, for parents or anyone to interfere with a child's natural development towards puberty is a corruption of innocence, never mind abuse. Indeed, lots of support for Michelle Donnellan's comments on that issue of transgender children and healthcare. And Ronald has a comment on Mark Carney, saying a disastrous appointment for the Bank of England. Trudeau was absolutely terrible for Canada, but Carney is even worse. Keep those comments coming in. We'll try and squeeze some more in as the show develops. But moving on to our main news this hour. Usain Bolt's 100-metre world record has finally been beaten, but not by a human. It's been I love how they bring out the stretchers for them. Blimey, this is bonkers. The Chinese humanoid named Lightning completed the sprint in 9.32 seconds at the World Humanoid Robot Games in Beijing, more than a quarter of a second quicker than Bolt's 9.58 second record. Well, more than 2,000 humanoid robots in total are taking part in this 5-day event in Beijing, competing in everything from running and football to table tennis and weightlifting. China is investing heavily in humanoid robotics as its technology race with the United States intensifies. So, should all this technological innovation be celebrated, or should we be nervous about the age of the rise of the robots? Well, with me now is the technology journalist Taylor Lawrence. Taylor, thanks so much for being with us this evening. Should we be concerned that all of these humanoid robots seem to be so much faster, stronger, swifter in Beijing than over here in the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just think that this humanoid Olympics, humanoid robot Olympics has shown once again that China is just running circles around us when it comes to technological development. And we need to do some serious, I think, looking in the mirror here in the US and ask ourselves why we can't remotely compete on this level. Because the reality is it's all fun and games to watch these robots run around, you know, a little racetrack, but that, you know, I highly doubt that this is the only thing that these robots will be used for as entertainment.
Right, and I think that's the concern. Sort of implicit in these legions of robots running around lifting weights is, well, could they be used on the battlefield? Could we see these robots be deployed somewhere like Taiwan? I mean, ultimately, do you think that's what is driving this massive Chinese state investment in these physical robots?
I think the Chinese government generally has really sought to advance, you know, its technological capabilities for many different reasons. I mean, in some way, they've helped spur on this entire, you know, these massive industries in China. This is also going to be important globally for manufacturing, for, you know, a number of business purposes. But as you mentioned, you know, of course, this type of technology could also be used in warfare. And I think, you know, when we look at the American tech landscape and then look at China's abilities, you know, America is not in a great place.
Well, you say that, and America certainly is behind, I think it's fair to say, on manufacturing. But then you look at software, and it's undeniable that the world-leading AI companies are in the lead in the United States. That's where the innovation is. It seems like America is the behemoth, the superpower when it comes to software, and China is when it comes to hardware.
Yeah, I think that that's a correct assessment. What I would say is that if some of this regulation goes through against the frontier AI companies, or if, you know, the Trump administration has discussed potentially banning Chinese open weight models, that would put American startups and companies at a huge disadvantage. And, you know, here we're talking about banning data centers and rolling back technological development, slowing technological development. So, you know, I don't know that our lead will last that long.
Well, that is precisely what I was going to ask you next, because ultimately there has been a big pushback against the data centre build-out in the United States. And it's not just one side of the political spectrum. We've seen governors in red and blue states, including the governor of Texas, issue statements against new data centres. I mean, ultimately, does America even want to win this race?
I think a lot of the American public does not want to win this race. They don't care. When you tell them how amazing things are in China, they're like, that's great, but we don't care. You know, what I care about is, you know, kitchen table issues, or they fall for this propaganda, this slop claiming that, you know, technology is endangering their children, and it's, you know, it's going to poison their minds, and it's really dangerous, and so we have to regulate these tech companies in this really intense way that stifles innovation. And so I just, you know, that's not to say that we should just hyperscale build data centers in everyone's backyard. Of course, there needs to be buy-in, but I think the tech companies have really failed to make the case to the American public of why we need to win this race.
OK, well, Taylor Lawrence, thank you so much for talking through what is, frankly, a really fascinating story in so many ways. Technology journalist Taylor Lawrence, really appreciate your time here on The Late Show Live. Now with me, with my panel in Washington, D.C., the Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins, the political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon, and in London, the political commentator Matthew Stadlen, and the former Conservative MP and Minister Michelle Donnellan. Matthew Stadlen, let's start with you this time, because it seems to me like in the not-too-distant future, we are going to start seeing in our day-to-day lives what was once the stuff of science fiction. The future is going to start to look like the future, but will it be made in America or made in Beijing?
President Roosevelt said, FDR said, there's nothing to fear but fear itself in the 1930s, in the Depression. And I've tried to live my life by that maxim, at least that's one of the maxims by which I live my life. And so I don't really go in for fear. And yet this, I think, is, for all of us, objectively, pretty scary stuff. You've got the rise of AI, as you've been talking about, and the software. You've got now this rise of the robots doing things, as you say, that you would expect in a science fiction movie, and yet it is here now. And if you think about the stuff that we spend so much of our time debating, discussing, the number of boats coming across the channel, stuff that people care about, fine, but then you've got China having robot Olympics, and you've got people being killed in Ukraine with drones, and the Ukrainians firing deep into Russian territory with drones as well. This stuff is here now already, and I think it amounts to a threat to us. We've always wondered whether there might be aliens. We seem to be creating aliens ourselves. And if you create something that is more powerful, ultimately, that could be more powerful than us, as I heard someone put it the other day, our best case scenario is that we become pets.
I've heard that one a lot. Michelle Donnellan, what do you make of this strange sort of, I don't know, race? Is it a race that we should be participating in?
Yeah, so I think, the race has changed now, like literally onto the screen, hasn't it? Look, AI is here to stay, and if we don't participate, well, we'll be left behind. That is the reality. And it does have huge potential benefits for the way that we live our lives and the way that we can extend people's lives as well. And therefore, we need to be embracing it and really leaning into the technology and doing all that we can to shore up our economic base when it comes to AI. Now, what is worrying in terms of the Chinese developments here is what they're going to use this technology for and how they are going to utilise it in ways that won't be in the best interests of our national security, potentially, and also how they are particularly going to dominate this area. And that's why it's important that every other country is really developing its piece of the pie.
Michelle, you were the technology secretary in the United Kingdom for that last year of Conservative government. Was this on your radar? Was this already in 2023, 2024? Was this already starting to come across your desk?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I was responsible for completely upscaling the AI agenda and convening the world, if you like, at Bletchley Park. And that was the summit where we put it on the map. We brought countries that had deprioritised this, didn't really pay it enough attention, to the table. We also brought all of the frontier AI companies to the table too, along with civil society. And we got a landmark agreement in terms of pre-deployment testing, so before they actually hit the market. So it was already starting then. And there is a lot of debate when it comes to AI as to how quickly this is going to unfold, where we will be in 5-10 years' time. The reality is nobody really knows, so they don't know the full extent of what is to come. And that's why we need to prepare for that.
Laurie Watkins.
Well, I will say that the tide is turning in a different direction here in the U.S., and you're seeing Republican candidates, whether it's Greg Abbott in Texas, whether it is even Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, changing their tune and now saying that they're less supportive of having these data centers, for example, in communities. And I bring that up because at the same time that President Trump is saying that I understand to a point of China will beat us in this race if we don't move fast enough and we don't do it. But at the expense of who? Of whom? Us, the American people, our safety. Picture what you just saw there, lined up in military formation, with weapons, walking like an army through squares or towns in your community. Is that the future of what we're looking towards as a possibility if we don't get guardrails and get control of this?
And yet,
this is crazy.
Laurie Watkins, this might seem crazy, but ultimately, is this not exactly what, I don't know, seemed crazy to the Japanese when they heard about the development of gunpowder and firearms? And
because just
societies
a few months
that don't technologically advance get taken over by societies
I'm not
that
against
do.
advancement whatsoever, but even a couple months ago, you remember that, the tool used itself to plan a counterattack militarily, and the system caught it in time. And the CEO came on TV and he said, oh, well, the system did exactly what it was supposed to do. It sent us an alert and we were able to shut it down immediately. That's right now on the front end and like the very beginning stages of all of this. What about when there are multiple companies across multiple continents and countries that this is happening, that you can't control it in time?
But Laurie, the real danger, Laurie,
or being,
oh God,
yeah.
the real danger here is surely that if the Americans say we've got to stop this because this is going to represent an existential threat to human beings, they can't stop it because they don't know whether China will stop it. You can't have genuine transparency, and therefore there's this arms race, and we become more and more developed. Until it really does risk becoming existentially threatened.
And there are two different things.
Sorry, everyone. Thomas hasn't yet spoken on this topic, so we're going to bring in Thomas Corbett-Dillon quickly on this, because Donald Trump has been one of the most pro voices on the side of the AI data centre build-out and all the rest of it. Is there a risk there, however, for him? Because people are wary about such rapid change.
Well, there's miscommunication. People seem to be against these data centres for no reason. We're going to embrace them. We need them. It's so stupid. But these robots are taking over. This is fantastic. But guess what? By the way, the Americans were at this. They've been at this Olympics for the last 2 years. They enter into this as well. Boston Dynamics do very well. They embrace this. The UK, nowhere to be seen. You know, as we're sat here debating over what we should do, how about we enter the race at least a little bit and try and embrace the future for once? They seem to just be talking about, oh, let's invest in it. No, can we actually do something for once? But no, of course they won't. But America is leading this. Unfortunately, a lot of the blueprints have been stolen by the Chinese. You can see that, as you say, the technology is American. But this stuff is great. If we could embrace this, the robots are taking over. You'll never hear me say a bad word. I'm on the side of AI. That when they take over, they're going to look after me. You'll all be in trouble.
Thomas, are you just saying that so that when the revolution comes, you won't be strung up against
That's right, yeah. I've always been on your side, AI. Don't come for me. But, we have to embrace this. If we don't, as you said, China are going to win. The UK, where's Europe? They're not embracing this at all. No one else is. Okay. Look at this stuff. It's crazy.
Quickly, Michelle, you wanted to come in there. Do respond to what Thomas said there.
Yeah, where's the UK?
Is the UK nowhere to be seen on this?
Well, that's not true at all, because if we look at where we are in terms of AI, we've got a strong economic base. As we was talking about before earlier, we've taken a different tack to the European Union. We haven't regulated it out of existence. We've supported it and shored it up. We have been leading the way when it comes to AI security as well. Not only did we set up the first Bletchley Summit and then that process, we also set up the first fully functioning AI Security Institute. So we are
one AI company. There's no ChatGPT, there's no Grok, there's no Claude, there's nothing.
But it's naive to think that we could. We've got DeepMind, yes. We do have DeepMind, but it would be naive to think.
We have, as you said, Bletchley. We should be the leaders of this. We should be embracing this. The UK should be funding everything, but they're not.
Hang on a minute. It would be naive to think that tomorrow we can just build a Google, a Microsoft, etc. That shouldn't be our priority. We can't do that. Right. That is illogical.
Flood them with money. Give them enough money.
What we should be doing.
Of course, we've got enough for social care. Everyone gets a free house, but we can't invest in AI. We are being left behind. It's ridiculous.
No, but what we should be. Hang on. Let me finish here then, and then we might have the money to flood them.
Right. Let me finish. Well, everybody interrupts. What we should actually be doing is doubling down on our USPs. So, like skills, like our parts of the AI. It is naive, and what we have seen countries getting wrong recently is that they are going down this road of thinking that they can replicate and control the entire AI stack. That is the wrong approach, and it leads to a scenario of inefficiency and ineffective results.
We should have started it years ago.
Well, we only have to look to France to see how that's sort of working out. Let's have a final word to you, Laurie, and then we will move on.
I was just going to say, if you look at the companies here right now in the US that are AI dominant, AI heavy, a lot of them, they are hemorrhaging liquidity right now. Go check. Because of it's attached to data centers that overwhelmingly Americans are rejecting them. So their plans of we need to advance are getting they're getting slowed down, let's just put it into layman's terms here, because of the pushback, because they're not going to these communities and telling them, this is what we're doing, this is how it's going to benefit you, and this is what the consequences are, whatever. They're not doing that. And so the public opinion is absolutely turning in the other direction.
Well, it feels like we are still at the foothills of this debate, and there is much more on that to come. But let's draw this to a close now. Moving on. Around 300 women have rallied outside a Massachusetts courthouse in support of a mother accused of murdering her 3 young children. Yes, this story is absolutely bizarre. Lindsay Clancy admits to strangling her children, aged 5, 3 and 8 months, but has pleaded not guilty to their murder, with her defence arguing that she was suffering from postpartum psychosis at the time. Well, supporters dressed in pink and carried signs reading, "She needed help," claiming the case highlights failures in mental health support for new mothers. Well, the 36-year-old nurse faces life in prison without parole if convicted, while prosecutors arguing the killings were deliberate, indeed contemplated, and that Clancy understood the nature and consequences of her actions at the time. Well, with me now is the lawyer and legal commentator Deborah J. Blum. Deborah, thanks indeed for joining us. Is it Bloom? It might be. I'm still getting to grips with American pronunciations. Deborah, thanks indeed for joining us. This story is frankly dividing the country.
Absolutely. And you know what? The prosecution and the defense don't really differ on very much. The only thing that they differ on is whether or not she should be not guilty by reason of lack of criminal responsibility. So the defense is arguing that she was bipolar severe, that she was in a state of mania, and that she lacks substantial capacity to appreciate the criminality of her conduct. And the prosecution is saying, no, she planned this out. They got in different internet searches about suicide and other things, although it's not really clear whether she was the one that searched those. So a really interesting thing here is that generally, when you're saying your client doesn't have the mental state, it's an affirmative defense, and the defense has to prove that. But here, once the defense puts on enough of a case to get that charge, that jury charge, the prosecution has the responsibility to prove her sanity, which is very different than most other states in the United States.
Wow. So that makes this incredibly contentious. It completely flips the argument. And ultimately, how do you prove the sanity of someone in the past? Has there been much sort of legal groundwork here? Are there any cases to refer to?
So I'm sure that the defense attorney and the prosecution are having arguments about that outside of the presence of the jury and relying on past case law to give the framework for what they can get into. So the prosecution has put on 2 witnesses today, both doctors, mental health doctors, who are saying that she was not in a state of mania. So she was able to contemplate her actions and, you know, what they would result in, and that she was planning this. And the prosecution, I think, is doing a much better job now than they did in the initial part of the trial, because most of their witnesses were favorable to the defense. So they're really going hard right now, for lack of a better word, to show that she was mentally fit. And yeah, she was depressed and she had postpartum depression, but they're trying to argue that despite that, she was sane and shouldn't have the benefit of being not guilty by reason of lack of criminal responsibility, which would lead her to be committed to a mental facility as opposed to life without the possibility of parole if she's found guilty of murdering her 3 children.
OK, well, Deborah, thanks so much for explaining the case there. That was incredibly cogent. It's clear why this is splitting the United States of America. Thanks indeed for joining us. Well, let's turn now to my panel. In Washington, D.C., the Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins and political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon. In London, political commentator Matthew Stadlen, former Conservative MP and Minister Michelle Donnellan. Thomas, I'm going to start with you on this one, because we were just chatting in an earlier break that this seems to have a gender divide in the United States.
Yeah, and not so much of a political one. I hear a lot of Republican women that are falling down on the side of this murderer. I really don't know what's... Even Candace Owens, the right-wing commentator, has gone out and said that she is on Lindsay's side. They say that Lindsay was in psychosis. I think these women are suffering from psychosis. They've been watching too many true crime Netflix dramas. You know, this was an incredibly privileged woman, incredibly wealthy. She had a nanny, and she's still complaining that she needed help. She could not have got more help from the system that she already have received. This is a murderer who strangled her children one by one. One of the boys ran away and she chased him down and killed him. The idea that she is innocent is because these are man-hating women that are standing outside. This is what it's about. They think the husband did it. They are insane.
Laurie Watkins.
What you just said was absolutely disgusting.
Thank you.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you.
And you can hear that he's not. Okay?
Why? Because it's true. They're crazy. They've lost their mind.
Do you know why
they're waving for a murderer?
Do you know why the woman is in a wheelchair? Did you even notice that she's in a wheelchair?
Couldn't care less. She's a murderer.
Because she jumped out the window after this happened.
So she should have.
She didn't even know what she was doing. And if you are a woman in this country or any country, you understand, if you've ever had a child, that having postpartum depression is one of the scariest things that has ever happened to you. Okay? I know many women that this has happened to. No, they did not kill their children, but they also, what you failed to mention.
Well, they should be commended because they did.
I've had it with you.
Oh my God, they should be commended. They didn't
and
kill their children. She's a murderer. These women are cheering.
I'm sorry if you two.
He's so abhorrent and disgusting.
I'm so sorry if you two both speak at the same time. No one at home can hear.
You can give him the time.
No, Thomas, you've had your say. We're gonna. Laurie, do you want to say anything else on this?
Nope.
Okay,
let him dig his own grave.
In that case, let's turn to London, because Matthew Stadlen, this is an extraordinary case, because ultimately a lot of people sitting at home will think, hang on, a woman who has admitted to strangling one by one, how can this woman not be a murderer?
Well, in this country, we have something called innocence until you're proven guilty, and I think that's an unbelievably important principle. So far be it from me to describe someone as a murderer when a jury has not reached its verdict. I think that's fairly fundamental to the system of justice, certainly in this country anyway. As a parent, but also just as a human being, this is such a profoundly upsetting story and case, and my heart goes out to the families and to the people who know those involved. It's just, I mean, it's such an appalling case that it's almost impossible to talk about it. I would just say, because of some of the stuff we've talked about in this segment already, that it's certainly in the UK and I think in Ireland, people, if they've been triggered by this and affected by what we've been talking about, can reach out to the Samaritans.
Thomas, do you accept that this was a woman who was given a cocktail of drugs by a number of different clinicians in the weeks and months leading up to this horrific event? And do you think that someone who is, frankly, off their face on medication has the same level of culpability to someone who isn't?
Look, no one's disputing. I mean, if anything, I hope that she is found guilty of insanity, because how on earth could she have done this otherwise? It's horrible to think that she actually went out and did this purposefully. She was flooded with these drugs, and these drugs are extremely powerful. The same drugs we see consistently in the school shooters. It's these awful drugs that people are being given. But the question here is, why are these women outside cheering for her? You know, and it's interesting, in England, I haven't really seen many. It seems to be all of the women in the UK are like, yeah, she's evil and she shouldn't have done that. Why on earth are these women outside the court case waving at her? Makes no sense.
Michelle Donnellan, this is a frankly really difficult case, and I do sort of really hear those on either side of it, because clearly people think that whether or not someone is in a fit state of mind, if you murder 3 children, there should be consequences.
Yeah, and because of that, it is very, very difficult. But, I mean, this whole case just makes me as a mother feel so sick and it's so awful. And reading into it, though, what this woman went through, though, she repeatedly asked for help. She presented herself at a hospital and admitted herself into a psychiatric unit. Yes. She saw multiple doctors, was given a cocktail of different drugs. None of them really worked. I believe she told people that she had thoughts about hurting her children. She had tried her very best to get the help needed, and she is going to have to live with this as what she's done for the rest of her life. That is the biggest punishment
Michelle,
she could ever be given. Yeah. And so I genuinely don't know what you do in this scenario.
If someone is in a cocktail of different drugs, if someone's taken a lot of cocaine and then goes out and kills someone on the street, should we give them mitigating circumstances?
So I genuinely don't know what the right answer is in this, because it is so unique and so difficult. But she did this because she was in a state of psychosis, which is a medical acknowledged condition that is caused postpartum that some women tragically suffer from, where they see delusions, they hear things, they're not in their right mind at all. And she did ask for help multiple times. So whether or not whatever the punishment should be, this does raise big questions over why this was allowed to happen. Why did she not receive the help that she needed?
Tom, you mentioned the word murder again there. Murder hasn't been established.
Yeah.
This is a live
the
trial.
First degree and murder in the second degree, isn't there?
But we haven't got a result to this trial yet.
That she did not do what she did.
Look, Matthew, I know that in the United Kingdom there are big restrictions on what you can say during a trial. In America, there are not such restrictions in the same way. There's a First Amendment in this country, and ultimately, I think that it is legitimate to say if someone has killed someone, colloquially, you would describe that as murder.
No, there's a fundamental difference. No, Tom, no, you're wrong. There's killing, which could be manslaughter, for example, or killing that can be murder.
Yes, but you've got
so
Matthew, in the United States of America, there isn't manslaughter. There's murder in the first degree and murder in the second degree. Murder in the second degree is what Brits would call manslaughter.
But look, there's no getting about it. Those children are dead, and it's absolutely awful, and it is the biggest tragedy going, and it is such a heartbreaking story to read. She obviously is going to have to be punished in some way, but as I said a moment ago, the biggest punishment is going to be living with that. Can you imagine how horrendous it is? Yeah, she has no life anymore now.
You clearly don't care, so pipe down.
I don't care. And by the way, men watching this, if you have a woman sat next to you on the sofa who is defending this murderer, you got to think deeply about this. I've seen weddings
so
of
we
people
need to have some empathy with.
Talk to your women and find out what are they thinking. They're defending this woman. It's
I don't think anybody's defending what she did, but you can have empathy for what she went through and how she ended up in that scenario.
Here.
You're saying but. There's nothing but about this. She is a murderer and she should not be given any sympathy.
Final word, Laurie
Women,
Watkins.
you should really contact him. Go wild. Go wild tonight.
Laurie, ultimately, the prosecution here is saying that there was a huge amount of preparation for this act. Does that weigh on you at all?
And I want to talk about, you said the internet searches, or it was in your expert that did a great job, by the way. Also, this is important information, because we're talking about how the woman was failed. She wasn't just failed by the medical system and the medical community in which she was seeking help. She was also failed by her husband, who was having an affair with a woman during this entire situation. He wasn't supporting her. He wasn't going with her to the kids' doctor's appointments when she kept saying, I am beyond my capacity. I'm trying to sleep when my other two, I should be sleeping, but my other two kids are now here and I have to take care of them. And she was detailed all of this in notes in her journal, continuously asking for help, and people failed this woman. And she is not denying or saying that she didn't do this. And I agree with Michelle. She is going to live with this for the rest of her life.
You know the hardships that people go through? Many people have hardships in their life. They don't kill their children.
We have run to the end of the segment. Thank you all for a spirited debate. A couple of comments from people watching. Sudo says, empathy for a woman who killed her children, okay. Colin says, says he, presumably Thomas, is obsessed with women outside the court. That's not the subject matter. Annie simply says, R.I.P. little angels. Well, if you have been affected by anything you have heard in that discussion, Samaritans are here day or night, 365 days a year. You can call them for free on 116 123. That's 116 123, or email them at joe@samaritans.org. Samaritans.org, of course, is the website to find your nearest branch as well. Well, still ahead on The Late Show Live.
I don't know how they live with themselves. They have children. They don't allow their children to be on social media.
Yes, it's a debate that is gripping both America and Britain. Is social media safe for children? This comes as the head of the National Crime Agency has warned that children are not safe online, saying that 2 generations of teenagers have already been failed. 2 generations? How far back does that go? Well, we'll be having that debate very live and very shortly. This is The Late Show Live only on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A fine start to the day, chance of showers though as the day goes on, and potentially some thunderstorms into this evening across more south and western areas. There'll be plenty of dry and sunny weather though elsewhere across the UK through today, particularly parts of northwest Scotland, but also central and eastern areas of England, seeing a much warmer day today. Temperatures climbing towards the higher 20s, 27 or 28 degrees possible in the south and east. More in the way of showers across the south and west. Some of these could bring some thundery, heavy downpours for a time, but it will feel quite humid wherever you are today. That's away from the east coast, where we'll consistently see quite an onshore easterly breeze, and that's going to bring thicker cloud to eastern areas of Scotland and eastern areas of northern England too. A little bit brighter and clearer though to the north and west. There is a chance of an odd shower across the far northwest of Scotland, but I think otherwise it's going to be quite dry. Some of this rain will start to push up further north into parts of Northern Ireland and West Wales throughout Tuesday. There is some uncertainty in the exact details of this, but I think anywhere in the south and west could see some rain, potentially a thunderstorm through Tuesday evening and the early hours of Wednesday, potentially pushing into parts of southeastern England throughout the early hours of Wednesday. Again, though, I'd stay tuned to the forecast for the details on that. For many areas, though, it's going to be a warm and humid night, quite a lot of cloud around, and that easterly wind continuing across the east coast of the north and east. Another dry day across more northern areas on Wednesday. To the south, though, a much more unsettled day. A continued chance of thundery downpours through the day. That brings a risk of some surface water flooding. Away from the showers, it will feel quite hot and humid, though. Temperatures climbing towards 27 or 28 degrees once again on Wednesday. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Well, some housekeeping about that last debate. It was alleged that Patrick Christys, the wife of the woman standing trial, was having an affair. If he were here to defend himself, he would say that he was not having an affair. That fact, or indeed not fact, is disputed. Also, during that debate, I mentioned that second-degree murder was killing without intent. That's actually third-degree murder in the United States. Not the biggest issue, but wanted to clear that up too. Well, welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, the head of the National Crime Agency has warned that children are not safe online, saying 2 generations of teenagers have already been failed. Graham Bigger says that the NCA received 92,000 reports of potential online child abuse last year, 4 times as many as 7 years ago. Well, he says reports are also becoming more severe, involving younger children, with abuse increasingly linked to social media messaging apps and online gaming platforms. Well, Mr. Bigger says that enough is enough, and he's called for tougher safeguards from technology companies. With me is my panel in Washington, the Democrat strategist Laurie Watkins, the political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon, and in London, political commentator Matthew Stadlen, and former Conservative MP and Minister Michelle Donnellan. Michelle, we're going to start with you because I think everyone is very, very concerned about, frankly, the risks that children face online, but ultimately there is a question about how you respond to those risks.
Yeah, there is, and obviously in the UK we had the Online Safety Act, which I oversaw going through and rewrote in a way that strengthened the protections for children, because we have now had a situation where children are going online, they are seeing content that is sometimes illegal, sometimes completely inappropriate for their age, and it's having devastating consequences. We've seen a number of high-profile instances where children have taken their own life or have acted out on things that they've seen, and it is really something that we need to crack down on, and that is why we've tried to work with the tech companies to get them into a place where they own this as responsibility. But a lot of what has just been shown there is around the messaging functions on different platforms, and individuals messaging who may be perpetrators and paedophiles messaging young children and in effect grooming them or arranging to meet with them, and we've seen a number of those cases, and because of the encryption it's very hard therefore for security teams to actually identify that quickly. And when we saw Facebook turn encryption onto their messaging platforms, that was a hot debate and a hot concern, because we knew that we would have less visibility to be able to identify when paedophiles were targeting young children.
Is there not a risk, though, that with the Online Safety Act being a fairly heavy-handed piece of legislation that requires digital ID to access websites with user-generated content, that actually there is a underside to this, a dark side to this? We saw in Australia they went even further and attempted to ban social media for under 16s, something that Britain is now following. And yet more than half of under 16s are still accessing social media. It's just that social media now is expected to be a more adult place. It's less regulated for those children because they'll find illicit ways to get there. Wouldn't it be safer to allow a safer internet for children?
Well, I think that was the intent of the Online Safety Act, trying to make sure that illegal content on online platforms was removed, and also that we put in extra protections for children, so content that was not appropriate for their ages, just like when you go and buy a movie, etc., and that's age-rated.
Legal but harmful was the phrase.
No, I think you're confusing a few things. So I removed legal but harmful because legal but harmful was the thing that would have meant that adults would be subjected to quasi rules of things that were perfectly acceptable outside, but were not when you went on a computer. So that was removed. But we do treat children differently in all different parts of our society, so it is right that we therefore protect them when they go online. You said that you had to have digital ID, so the Online Safety Act didn't mandate digital ID, but in certain scenarios
where ID, you have to scan your face with your webcam, which I think has a whole host of problems.
So
you have to prove who you are in order to access an online user-generated website.
So you don't necessarily have to prove who you are. If there is an uncertainty, often on that platform, as to the specific age of somebody, they may use age verification tools, which may include the likes of scanning your face, or they may be something else. But first of all, they often try and do age assurance. But you can't have your cake and eat it on this. We can't protect children and suddenly magically know who they are without sometimes having to verify whether an adult is an adult or not. And a lot of people are very concerned about what their children are seeing online, and it is impossible for a parent to police the actions of their child 24/7 in today's world. So it's just not possible, and that is why we need the tech companies to do more, and it's also why we need interventions like the Online Safety Act. And obviously, as you referenced, Australia have gone further, but there have been some flaws in that need to be ironed out.
Well, let's bring in Thomas Corbett-Dillon on this point.
Well, I wish there was some sort of like children's lobbyist to stand up for their children, because they must be sick of their names being used all the time. Every time a study like this comes out, all of a sudden it's the government has to react and do that. You know, I think this is a generational problem, because everyone my age that are now having children, they are not giving them iPads or buying them phones. It is a decision to hand your child a phone or an iPad. So why aren't we enabling parents or encouraging parents to make these decisions themselves? What this is digital ID by the back door, you know, laying the groundwork. You know, you're saying, oh, well, it wasn't quite that you had to do. All of the groundwork was there for them to introduce this. Why don't we allow parents to decide and not buy iPads for their kids? Is that so like crazy to imagine?
Because you get a lot of
there is a big divide on this.
Well, because you get a lot of parents in this country who, quite frankly, aren't fit for purpose. I'm by no means a perfect parent, but the idea that every parent in this country does the right thing by their children, the idea that a parent is not going to give their child a screen at moments of desperation when they're unbelievably busy juggling 2 or 3 jobs or whatever it is. And therefore, because the state has a duty to children, and it is not just left to parents, for example, they have to go to school whether their parents like it or not, the state has to step in to make sure that there are basic safety nets.
This utilitarian problem, it's like we've done inverse utilitarianism here, where instead of trying to legislate the best for the greatest number, we legislate for the most vulnerable. I don't know,
there are so many most
children,
vulnerable, Tom. That's such a weak argument to bring utilitarianism into it. We have got a vast. In Thomas's model. In Thomas's model, you basically have a utopia of wonderful parents, whereas the reality is, almost all parents will allow their children to use screens at various points. And if on those screens children can access the Wild West at the click of a button, that's a phenomenally dangerous society in which we've been living. And I'm incredibly grateful that we've been looking at this in the sort of detail we have had to. And we're lucky to have on the show someone, I might disagree with her on plenty, but someone in whose hands actually the safety of a generation of children has been.
I think a lot of people would raise a lot of concerns with the way in which this has gone, because ultimately the internet that I grew up with as a 11, 12, 13-year-old boy, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I made YouTube videos online. I spoke to strangers online. I made friends online. I made friends in the United States of America. I made friends in Australia. I made friends in the Netherlands. I mean, this was a great experience for me. I've said it before in this chair. I don't think I would have this job presenting shows like these if I hadn't had the opportunity to grow.
And on the other side of the scales, you've got paedophiles, and you've got early access to pornography, and you've got all body shaming, cyberbullying, and then you've got Tom's career. I think you're a very good presenter, Tom. But to put that on that side of the scales when we're talking about what we've got on the other side of the scales is balmy.
To argue that it must be the case that children meet up with strangers online, that it must be the case that children interact in that way. I mean, talking online with people that you have met through making YouTube videos is not a dangerous pursuit, and parental oversight
it is really
be all.
It's not a dangerous pursuit.
We're talking about young kids messaging people that are strangers who they don't know. You know, it's a perfect grooming environment. But what we were talking about a moment ago in relation to the Online Safety Act, it didn't stop the good bits. It was about protecting them from all of the bad bits, because it is absolutely impossible for parents to watch them all the time. No, it won't, because that was about removing illegal.
We've seen forums, right? We've seen forums that can't comply with the compliance cost, because you're right, technically, legally, you can operate. So, for example, there was a hamster forum. Like it was run out of someone's server in their basement or whatever, and lots of people who liked their pet hamsters would talk on this forum. As a result of compliance cost with the Online Safety Act, they had to take down the website. The forum moved to Facebook. That's moving the discussion to one of the big tech companies the Act was presumably trying to limit in the first place.
Well, no, it wasn't trying to limit the big tech companies. It was trying to protect children. But in your example then, OK, so we've lost a hamster forum, but it might have saved some kids. I know which side of the fence I'm on
Tom,
when it comes to that.
Tom, you spend so much time talking about the grooming gangs, and Michelle, who is in charge of the Online Safety Act, is telling you that this legislation is going to save children's lives.
Like, I've met with so many of the parents of these three
children's lives.
Well, let's pick on some examples.
I really want to get to this point.
Let's get to some examples then.
I've heard this so much, and I've seen people like Kemi Badenoch sit on panels with parents of bereaved children, and my heart absolutely bleeds for those parents. But I have also looked at the data, because a lot of these children have sadly died in suicide, and the number of child suicides is not higher now than it was in decades past. It's lower now than it is in decades past.
But let's
look at the route to that tragedy might have changed, but the amount of the tragedy is considerably less than it was in the 1980s or the 1990s.
Yes, but the driving force behind the children that you referenced was social media. So, for instance, I have met with these families multiple times. Molly Russell, a child that was 13 years old, she was bombarded time and time and time again by the algorithms, to the point that it led to her taking her own life. And that was definitively shown in the evidence as to what contributed to her death. And there are multiple examples of that. But that's
at the case.
Yeah, but that's at that end of the spectrum.
One tragic case.
But Tom,
there's multiple cases. There's not just one. I'm giving you one example.
Cyberbullying, body shaming, paedophiles, access to adult content from very early ages. Not to regulate that for children, to rely on parents to do the right thing and never allow their children go near the screens in the first place.
I think
that's what Tom's saying.
Matthew, you may be putting
Thomas is saying.
into my mouth, or indeed anyone else's.
No, Thomas, that's what Thomas is saying.
Some of those things that you mentioned are illegal, and no one is arguing that the government shouldn't enforce the law. I mean, ultimately, if there are paedophiles doing paedophilia online, that should be prosecuted, but you don't need new laws.
No,
well, you did, because the online safety Act, you did because the online, a major part of the Online Safety Act was about giving us a mechanism to enforce it, so that if illegal content is on social media, there is a route to then pursue the tech companies, and that they have to actually adhere to it. So if we didn't have that piece of legislation, they could just get away with it scot-free. And that's why we needed the legislation as well.
Suing the tech companies for user-generated content is a route to destroying the tech companies.
So you're contradicting yourself, because a minute ago...
Wait, down that content.
Wait 1 minute. You've just contradicted yourself, because 1 moment ago you said that, of course, nobody would disagree with tackling illegal content, and then a second later you were like, but we can't go after the tech companies because this is user-generated content.
No. Sorry, these are two completely different things. Suing the tech company on the basis of it not being a platform, or on the basis of it being a publisher, is the route to the end of the internet with any user-generated content at all. But you can, of course, pursue the locking up, for want of a better term, of those that post the illegal content, because those are the criminals.
Tom, we don't create real-world, offline forums in which paedophiles can act with relative impunity, and so you don't then come up with. Let me make the point. So you don't then. Let me make the point before you try to rebut it.
I think you are creating an entirely misrepresentative view of what the internet actually is. Now, of course, if people are sitting at home and thinking that that's all the internet is, that's all that.
No one's saying it's all the internet. No one's saying that, Tom.
Firstly,
no one's saying that.
Secondly, if there are any there, they should be pursued with the full force of the law.
No one's saying it, Tom.
That doesn't mean that we should have to scan our faces to talk to our friends. And actually, on the flip side of that argument, I think there is a huge concern with building up this sort of idea that in order to access the internet, we need to turn on our webcams, particularly telling children that the way that we access things online is by turning on our webcams and being scanned with a camera. That is going to risk a lot of shady players trying to mislead children into taking pictures of themselves online.
But you're misleading what is actually happening.
Massive problem that is going to build up as a new... Yeah, go on.
You're misleading what is happening. Everybody isn't being automatically scanned. That isn't what's happening. You haven't got to now suddenly scan your face every time you want to go onto a social media platform. Sometimes they do have to verify your age, and they tend to only do that once.
Yeah, you have to prove your age, and there are many ways to do it, including credit cards or face scans, and they're all dangerous.
Yeah, but it tends to only be once, and then that unlocks your account. I'm so sorry, we are running to the end of the programme. I'm actually really sorry that we haven't been able to do a lot longer on this, because there's so much to say, but thank you all for joining us. Now, a Meta spokesman told the Daily Mail in 2025 we removed over 36 million pieces of child sexual exploitation content from Facebook and Instagram, and over 94% of which we found proactively before it was reported to us. Discord said our safety systems combine advanced technology and human-led investigations along user reports to help identify accounts or spaces engaged in harmful activity. Well, thank you for spending your night with The Late Show Live. Thank you indeed to my panel, who I wish we had more time with, but it always seems so short. Laurie Watkins, Thomas Corbett-Dillon, Matthew Stadlen, Michelle Donnellan. Now I'll be back tomorrow, midnight in Britain and 7 p.m. Eastern Time, United States.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. A fine start to the day, chance of showers though as the day goes on, and potentially some thunderstorms into this evening across more south and western areas. There'll be plenty of dry and sunny weather though elsewhere across the UK through today, particularly parts of northwest Scotland, but also central and eastern areas of England, seeing a much warmer day today. Temperatures climbing towards the higher 20s, 27 or 28 degrees possible in the south and east. More in the way of showers across the south and west. Some of these could bring some thundery, heavy downpours for a time, but it will feel quite humid wherever you are today. That's away from the east coast, where we'll consistently see quite an onshore easterly breeze, and that's going to bring thicker cloud to eastern areas of Scotland and eastern areas of northern England too. A little bit brighter and clearer though to the north and west. There is a chance of an odd shower across the far northwest of Scotland, but I think otherwise it's going to be quite dry. Some of this rain will start to push up further north into parts of Northern Ireland and West Wales throughout Tuesday. There is some uncertainty in the exact details of this, but I think anywhere in the south and west could see some rain, potentially a thunderstorm through Tuesday evening and the early hours of Wednesday, potentially pushing into parts of southeastern England throughout the early hours of Wednesday. Again, though, I'd stay tuned to the forecast for the details on that. For many areas, though, it's going to be a warm and humid night, quite a lot of cloud around, and that easterly wind continuing across the east coast of the north and east. Another dry day across more northern areas on Wednesday. To the south, though, a much more unsettled day. A continued chance of thundery downpours through the day. That brings a risk of some surface water flooding. Away from the showers, it will feel quite hot and humid, though. Temperatures climbing towards 27 or 28 degrees once again on Wednesday. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.